Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And just before we move into our formal committee business, I know that each of you has received a communication from Councillor Hopkins, and we had an opportunity to speak today as well, and she's asked me to pass on her thanks for all of the return messages that you provided individually, and she's also asked me to just say a few words about the situation that she and her family are experiencing at the moment. As you all know, colleagues, her partner was diagnosed with a cancer last week and has received some treatments for that cancer and is expected to continue to receive treatments in the time ahead. Councillor Hopkins is going to be focused, of course, on her family and on her husband over the course of the next little while. And I know that we all are feeling for her, are feeling for her family, and will do anything we possibly can to provide support. And so for any public watching at home, if you see that Councillor Hopkins isn't in her chair today, it's because she's focused on this matter, and she expects to focus on this matter for some time to come. And I know that as she's able to provide updates, she's going to do that. So again, Councillor Hopkins asked me to pass that along to everyone here and to the public watching. And like I said, I already know that many, if not all of you, have reached out to say whatever support's required, you'll be there to provide it. So thank you for that as well. Colleagues, I'm going to look for any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Okay, there being none, I'm going to move then to the agenda. What I'd like to do with the agenda today is we have a couple of timed items. Now, we have a delegation scheduled for 4:10, and it is 4:05. We also have a request for delegation status in the 6th report of the 4th report of the Outstanding London Ambassador Awards. I'm just wondering, I'd like to deal with those two matters first. Obviously, we have to wait 5 minutes to deal with the Live, Work, Learn, Play update. If there's anyone from the London Ambassador Awards that is here, and I'm just wondering if you're prepared to speak to this at this time, if we grant you delegation status, or are we hoping to make a presentation at our next meeting? And if I could just ask for you to approach the microphone, then folks at home can hear as well. Yeah, sorry, I think I caught you off guard.
Sorry, a little bit. Yeah, my name is Michael Barrett,
nice
chair of
Michael.
The committee.
And the question was, were you looking for delegation status today at this meeting or at a future meeting?
Today at this meeting.
Okay. So what I'd like to do, colleagues, is just deal with item 6, if we could, in the items for direction. And then as soon as we hit the 4:10 mark, then we'll move with the Live, Work, Learn, Play. So what I'll need is a motion, if it'll come up on screen in a moment, to receive the delegation. Councillor Helmer.
Although I can appreciate that the folks from the committee may want to have delegation status, I'm a little confused because there's nothing on the agenda saying they want to have delegation status. It seemed to be something that's coming up in between. And it also seems like
added agenda.
On the agenda. Okay, that's great. I got it. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So that motion will come up on screen, and I'll be able to let you know, sir, in just a few moments if that delegation status has been granted.
Thank you very much.
Moved by Councillor Van Hol, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Any additional discussion on this? Coming to call the question. We're voting. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Squire, before we call that vote.
A number of delegations that come to council and committees from people in my ward who have issues to deal with. Habitually, the delegation is put off to another meeting when we have the appropriate amount of time. So I'm going to be voting against both of these delegations being heard tonight. I think they should, in due course, be heard when we're able to do the business or have time available. This is a very heavy agenda tonight, particularly on this delegation. We had no notice till now that there was even a delegation. So I'd like to move an amendment that we receive the delegation, but not hear it until the next meeting. And if that's defeated, it's defeated, and I'll vote against the main motion. And I'll be doing the same on the other delegation.
Okay. The motion we have before us, technically speaking, we're at committee, but it's been moved and seconded, and it's to receive the delegation this evening. And so what I'd like to do is just, let's have a quick vote on this. If the delegation has been received, we'll hear the presentation. If it's voted down, I'll entertain a motion right away that aligns with the direction you want to take this, Councillor Squire, which is to receive them next meeting. I don't think anyone here is saying that you don't want to hear from them. You're just saying that it would be more appropriate from your perspective that they come at the next meeting, just based on the agenda that we have before
That's
us.
correct. And the fact we just received, as we sat down, notice that there was a delegation.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've got a motion that's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion at hand? Yep, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, it says here that the request for delegation is to do with the 5th report of the Outstanding Ambassador Award. We only have a 4th report, so I'm not so sure what we are talking about here. Could you help me explain it?
So it's,
You'll find the 5th report attached to the request. It's on the added.
because they just,
Okay, I don't have any additional speakers, so let's quickly move forward. We'll call the question. We're voting.
closing the vote and the motion carries 10-2.
Okay, thanks, colleagues. So we'll receive the delegation now. If you'd like to approach the microphone and just introduce yourself again, and you have the floor.
All right. My name is Michael Barrett, chair of the committee. We've made a recommendation for the award, the outstanding. So we've made our recommendation for the award, and we are working on the evaluation form, and we've and approved a nomination form. Sorry. Yep.
Okay, and that's the message you wanted to bring forward to council
Yep,
this
sorry.
evening through SBPC? Okay. Thank you very much. Do I have any questions from members? Go ahead, Councillor Usher.
What I heard, and maybe I didn't hear is right, the gentleman says that he has put forward a recommendation. Is this what he is saying? Is that over and above anything that we have? I don't quite understand what this delegation is saying to me.
You have a recommendation, I think that you're aware, and I think my interpretation of this delegation was that you wanted to let us know you were bringing that recommendation forward. It's in our
Correct.
agenda package, and you wanted to give us an update on next steps for future years, and that will be coming forward at a subsequent time. Is that right?
That'll be coming forward.
Okay.
subsequent-
Okay.
that's
I don't think we
correct.
need to spend a lot of time here, folks. I think that we've received the delegation. And so what I'm going to do is just look to deal with item 6, unless there are any speakers. There are none, and so let's do, just in the interest of saving time, what we're going to do is receive 6 and 7. That'll come up on screen. Thank you very much for coming tonight. You're welcome to stay. We'll be here for hours. Okay, colleagues.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
before you open the vote, this says the fourth and fifth report. The delegation status was item 7. Are we approving item 6 as well?
So this is items 6 and 7,
Which is the fourth.
the fourth and fifth report. Okay, all set. Any other questions? We are voting.
Closing the vote and the motion carries 12-0.
Okay, colleagues, it's now just past 4:10, so I'm going to invite Jeanette McDonald from downtown London forward to the podium. There are a number of guests as well that I understand Jeanette will be introducing. What I'd like to do is we'll work our way through the presentation. We'll then have time for any technical questions, any questions for the presenters, and then we'll move into a more formal debate at that time. Councillor Squire?
Point of order, we've got to vote on whether to receive the delegation and hear it tonight. And as earlier indicated, I'm not opposed to hearing them, but I want to move on with other matters tonight and have the delegation heard on another occasion. So I'd like the opportunity to vote on that.
Councillor, this is somewhat a different situation from the previous decision. That was a request for delegation status. This is an invitation that's been extended previously. They're coming back as a delegation. It's scheduled on the agenda at 4:10 today, like we would have any other scheduled matter. And so it's my intention to receive the delegation. It was on the public report. It's been circulated, and people have been expecting this for the better part of a week. So I'm going to move forward with this. This is the 410 delegation. I'm going to pass things over to Ms. McDonald to introduce your topic and also your team.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council, for your time this evening. Joining me tonight are Gerald Gallagher, who's the chair of the London Downtown Business Association, Don McCallum, who's the chair of the Main Street London Board, Joseph Milo is the project manager from Live, Work, Learn, Play, whom you're going to be hearing from and not me, Richard Martz from Live, Work, Learn, Play, and in the gallery we have a number of our community partners that I'm not going to go through and mention all of them. I don't want to take up our 20 minutes, but we have LEDC, Arts Council, our colleagues from Old East Village and the Economic Development Corporation out there, Grand Theatre, our board members, and a few of our stakeholders. So I just wanted you to know that we are well supported in this report this evening. So I think you'll recall earlier this year we came and we requested that the city help us fund this report with Live, Work, Learn, Play for the good of our downtown and the good of our entire community. Unfortunately, you turned that down, but that neither discouraged us nor stopped us going ahead. So our board thought this was important enough for us to redo our budget, dig into our piggy banks, reprogram our programs for the next year and a half, and we hired them anyway. So these are the things, you can read them, I'm not going to read them out to you. These are the things we asked them to bring back to us. Essentially, what's working in our downtown and what's not working in our downtown. And they've come back to us with a very fulsome report on things that are working really, really well for us and that we should continue to do and continue to support. And a few items that are stumbling blocks for us. And just before I hand it over to Joseph, I just want to thank City Administration, Mr. Zudema, who helped us work with the senior leadership team with this report. And through that, we've narrowed down our focus to three items instead of 9, because there's been some really fulsome conversations that have gone on with the bureaucracy and our different partners in the community. So I'm very thankful for that. Things are moving along really, really well in our existing partnerships. So what I need from you tonight, I'm going to have Joseph Milos bring to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Joseph, welcome.
Your Worship, members of council, thank you for taking the time today. I'm going to try to keep this as quick as possible since I know it is a packed agenda. What I'm here to present today is both our context and SWOT analysis, as well as our reconnaissance of what we heard from the stakeholder community of downtown London, and then our strategic assessment and recommendations that we provided to downtown London in the inevitability chance that we didn't carry forward with this project. I can say that downtown London has retained us for the next 14 months to help them on the downtown, so you will be seeing myself and Richard for at least the next year and a bit. To set the context, the downtown is an amorphous beast. It is defined by many different borders. The shaded purple is the city boundary of the downtown area. The dark purple is the BIA boundary, which is what we constrained ourselves to. for this report, but we always keep in mind that there are other areas that can be considered downtowns that border this area. So everything that feeds into the downtown has an impact on its surroundings. We started with a review of all of the policy context of what makes downtown London. And this not only includes the downtown plan, which is your move forward, but also the Millennium Plan, which is what set the basic framework and building blocks of the downtown that you have today in place. That was an award-winning plan, and it really is what has structured the downtown anchors that you have. The Community Economic Roadmap, the City of London Strategic Plan, and the State of the Downtown Report all paint a very positive picture of the downtown, which is this. A quick snapshot is that population and the residential market in downtown London is on the rise. You are bringing in more people every year. You're also approving more buildings, which creates that density. But the thing is that it has to now transition into real development. So things that are approved need to actually lead to population growth. What we've noticed is comparative to the rest of downtown, or the rest of the City of London, the downtown hasn't grown at the same rate. Your retail market is quite strong. You haven't added a lot of new retail space to your downtown core, but that holds to the fact that you have historic buildings and a historic stock. You're not tearing those down to make way for new, but you have that existing stock to build from. However, your retail vacancy is roughly about 8%. And when we factor in retail spaces that aren't necessarily performing to their highest and best value, that vacancy rate is probably closer to 10. Your office market is incredibly strong in some instances. From 2002 into 2008, you can see a great spike in that red line, which is your office market's total volume of space growing. It levels off in 2008, as to be expected with the state of the climate in the world. However, when you look at those other lines, that is your vacancy rate. And on an average, it is about 12 to 15% vacancy across all classes. In some classes, it spikes higher than 30%, meaning that 1 in 3 buildings of Class D office is vacant at this point. That means that there's a lot of supply, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's enough demand to fill the product that you have. You have an economic development problem in your downtown right now, which is a problem for the rest of your city. This is our very detailed SWOT analysis. I know that the packages have been distributed, so I won't take the time to walk through each point. But to summarize, in terms of the threats that we identified facing the downtown today, there is a problem with market perception. Currently, right now, in the world that is the GTA, as well as the marketplace, these are just the first articles that get pulled when you go and search through downtown and London, Ontario. And this is reality. You have to actually look quite a bit further to find the positives, to find the $66 million that was donated to Western, to find the other stories that can be the economic drivers of London. So whether or not there are positives or opportunities, right now the threat, the perception that shapes the downtown image is the thing that is holding the downtown back and needs to change. In terms of our reconnaissance and stakeholder outreach, over 4 months, I can say that we led a very robust process of trying to speak to as many people as possible. This included both the private and cultural institutions in your downtown, social services, people within the city, including your senior leadership team, and then finally our downtown advisory board, which we met with at least 2 to 3 times per month. Out of all of those meetings, accumulating, I think at this point, more than 50, we've identified 3 major things that are working in downtown London today. And these are all things that are enviable to other downtowns in the GTA and things that create a real difference in your ability to brand and market and bring in opportunity. The first is the strong bones that were created under the Millennium Plan and that are continued to be supported. You have a walkable urban grid. You have a historic base that you didn't get rid of that needs to be safeguarded. You also have a good selection of food and entertainment offerings. Your downtown really is a place for people to come, congregate, and spend time and money in, which is something that a lot of downtowns in the GTA can't say and are trying to bring in. The second are your strong anchors. You have the London Convention Centre, Budweiser Gardens, Covent Garden Market, Fanshawe College, which is both phase 1 and phase 2 and future expansion potentially, and finally Victoria Park. Each of these are things that in the downtowns we work in, they aren't thought about until after the fact, and then they're tried to be retrofitted in. You have a great starting point for strong anchors The unfortunate part is they're not talking to one another. They're not creating a holistic experience. They're existing off on their own as individual things. We heard quite consistently, people will come downtown to go to a London Knights game at Budweiser Gardens, but they don't think they're in the downtown. They will come to go spend a day in Victoria Park, but they're not in the downtown. They're in Victoria Park. These anchors are sort of talking in solitude. The third is a regional identity that's really emerging as unique and different to London, and that's the idea of downtown London as being a center for culture, arts, and music. This is something that we identified early on through conversations with the London City Music Hall, as well as Budweiser Gardens. The local programmers who are in the audience today. They're all creating programming and also have a vision for what the downtown can be, which is that center for music that no other downtown in the GTA can lay credit to. It's something that can really distinguish as well as bring in new development opportunity and different programming attractions. What's not working is a little more nuanced. We identified 9 items that we would say are not working in the downtown today. Of these 9, I can say that 5 to 6 of them have taken on a life of their own since this report was fashioned, and we can say that they are actually beginning to move forward through action with ourselves, with downtown London staff and stakeholders, and your city staff. Tonight, I'm going to focus on 3 that remain outstanding as not working. The first is drug use and street culture. I think the most pressing image from the slide I showed you of the stories is the fact that drug use features so heavily into them. Downtown London is being known in the GTA as a place where people are coming who have problems in this nature. It's something that needs to be tackled because it creates an economic development as well as a real estate problem in investment opportunity for your downtown. That's not to say, however, that you treat it as a law and order situation. You treat it as only a real estate solution can solve this. It has to be tackled in a holistic manner and as a public health problem. And that's something that not only needs to be tackled from yourselves at the city, but also from other stakeholders and institutions. Your drug strategy is a great start, but there are very specific physical areas in your downtown today that are being blighted by this problem and need to be solved for. The second is the supply of active development sites. You are approving buildings, and that is a good start, but from everyone we spoke to in the private sector, there is the worry that there's not enough of a supply of places to build. There aren't enough vacant parcels or easy to move parcels that mean that you're not going to get into a quagmire of trying to go through a laborious development process or a complicated type of development to bring it forward. And the biggest thing that the downtown needs to do is to continue to bring more people into it on a permanent manner. That's the way in which you can future-proof it to be counter-cyclical to the market. That's also the way that you can create the proper constituency to really support the programming year-round and day-round. Finally is the conflicting mandates that we identified to the downtown. What we heard across a variety of stakeholders, public and private, is that downtown London, the business improvement area, was a de facto voice for the downtown. They were the person being tasked outside of their mandate to know what was happening in the downtown and be able to solve for it. And with that sort of conflicting mandate about not knowing who is in charge or who is owning the downtown vision, there's no consistency in being able to pull that vision forward. There really does need to be a coordinator across all levels of stakeholders who can do that. And we think that needs to live with yourselves in the city, because that sort of role is someone who can touch all the major transit projects, all the major investments and opportunities that present themselves, and can also align staff and stakeholders properly. In terms of our recommendations, we put forward 8 to downtown London as things they needed to work on over the immediate, short, and longer terms. The first, immediately, was to disarm drug use and street culture. And this is, again, not to be seen as crime and punishment or a militarization of streets, but really a way in which to bring a more public health and also programming sense to it. A lot what you're going to see focuses on the programming of space to bring more people into it so that you rebalance the us versus them phenomenon. The first was to establish green zones, which are places of retaking the street, of applying simple measures like crime prevention through environmental design to really make it so that everyone in London feels safe within them. We heard not only last week from the chief of police when we spoke to him about the problems he sees in London and how he can help, but also the anecdote that his wife last week didn't feel safe getting out of their car in the downtown because of these sorts of perceptual problems. And she's arguably the safest person in London at that moment, being in the chief of police car. The second is to establish a coordinated approach between city staff, local agencies, downtown stakeholders, the police, and the health units to tackle this problem. It cannot be viewed as a one-size-fits-all or a single approach will solve it. It has to be done in a holistic manner that stresses the public health side of things. Your drug strategy is going to be in a good place to be able to begin to tackle this, but it is not there yet. It needs to have this immediate sort of intervention to really make places like Market Lane safe so that everyone in your downtown and city feels comfortable walking through them. In terms of where we think the green zones need to be established, we would identify Victoria Park as well as the future Dundas Place, which is 5 blocks of Dundas, as the places that these interventions need to be put. And they're all necessarily low scale, but they can have great impact. It's about establishing places where everyone can feel safe in the hot zones where they've identified these sorts of issues exist. The second, in the short term, is to advance downtown transformations responsibly. And what we mean by this is not only to establish activation and safety plans, meaning that for things like Dundas Place, it's best to view it as a community center that's been turned inside out. It's a major capital investment, but you would never start a community center without an idea of how you're going to program it, fund it, and operate it for at least 10 to 15 years down the road. Dundas Place is not an infrastructure project, it's a placemaking project. If you don't have an idea of how you're going to activate it, as well as keep it operating and safe, then there's a failing, because on day one, you're going to turn it out to the public and they're going to continue to use it like Market Lane is, which is a place in which not necessarily the best aspects of programming in your downtown is happening. The second is to appoint an urban coordinator to manage the downtown area. And this isn't just the urban core of downtown London, the BIA, but the urban core of all the surrounding area that is the urban areas of your city. As I said at the start, the downtown really has these spin-off effects for the surrounding areas of London. It needs to be managed in a very holistic manner by someone at the city who can actually go cross-department and cross-staff to bring the right people to the table. Finally, manage new transformative projects with a holistic view. And we would say strike a working group. Secondly, pilot new strategic interventions. This is well within downtown London's wheelhouse, which is to look at areas where you can do low-cost interventions and programmatic experiences to bring more people here. This was the very schematic areas in which we identified for downtown London that they needed to potentially spend some time and energy programming not only on one-off weekends, but throughout the week and throughout the year. Really making it so that you draw more people into your downtown and funnel them into the core. To put this in perspective of what is possible, Live, Work, Learn, Play for a client of ours who had a small parking lot and the mandate of bring more people to it to animate it, came up with over 88 interventions, all of which could be done on a low-scale budget. These are the type of things that we are going to help downtown London and work with them to accomplish for each of these areas so that we can create a more holistic package of how to bring people to these spaces and animate them year-round. In the medium term, sponsor more development downtown. We suggested that downtown London work with yourselves to establish a gold star program for downtown developments, a way in which to shepherd them through the approval process sooner or quicker if possible, potentially as having downtown London be the control authority at the start to make sure that they have the checklist to check things off when it comes to it to make the application faster for yourselves. Unlock underutilized development sites in the downtown. Look to ways to actually move parking lots or other opportunities to developable in a manner that's actually thought out. So when rapid transit comes online, when other projects begin to move forward, actually take a long view as to where do you want development to happen and how can we shepherd it through quicker. And then finally, take a review of heritage assets in the downtown so that we're saving the buildings that are worth saving and coming to the right conclusion about what those are, but then not necessarily fighting it out over things that don't reflect the best of London and are standing in the way of these other opportunities. Reprogram and re-tenant the downtown. This is what Live, Work, Learn, Play does. This is our bread and butter. What we mean by this is taking the downtown as it exists today, looking at every space possible and beginning to create a holistic program for the ground floor. There are a number of uses in your downtown's retail makeup that aren't necessarily the highest and best use or fit with the type of use you want to see in your downtown. We're currently beginning this process with Jeanette and her team and hope to be able to actually usher in a collaborative process with downtown landowners and other stakeholders to see that we can attract the right types of uses to your ground floor and really help knit those individual anchors into a holistic experience. In the longer term, coordinated economic development. The LEDC does an amazing amount of good. It has a great mandate and it does great work, but they're not the only agency doing economic development in the city, and it's important to stitch all of those pieces together. The LEDC has a great ability to attract development, whereas Jeanette has the great ability to sell the downtown. So it's about squaring that hole and really bringing two agencies together properly. And this is my note to remind everyone that the downtown is the economic engine of the entire city. So a strong downtown, a strong urban area really is beneficial for the entire city. The downtown is the highest taxed area. It has the best return. So by creating more development within it, you're really fueling that tax return for the entire city of London. Plan for more town and gown integration. There are some great partners in your downtown with Fanshawe College. There's also a great partner potentially to the north in Western. So any way in which you can bring more institutional uses into your downtown core, the better. That creates a counter-cyclical market effect. When the economy goes south in other areas, institutional goes up. So you want to build that into your downtown so you create an experience that is necessarily, no matter what the economic cycle, people are visiting and using it. And finally, improve on the downtown experience. This is the window dressing that makes great downtowns really sing, but bringing consistent wayfinding, bringing consistent standards to your streets, a consistent style so that you actually are able to make downtown holistic and not just a collection of small places. In terms of our next steps over the next 14 months, to summarize, we've put together a 3-step process to really bring our work as well as the work of a number of other factors into play together. The first is to establish the Downtown London Working Group. This is a group of people that are downtown stakeholders, be they property owners, city staff, downtown London staff, or others who have a voice as well as decision-making authority in the downtown. What's been missing is collaboration as well as a view about what each part is doing. So it's making sure that the left hand is talking to the right hand about things like security, programming, safety, public health, and everything else that needs to go into every decision a downtown makes. Develop action plans to target implementable projects, not only those lists of 88 potential programming strategies for every area of the downtown to make it holistic, but also for big moves like Dundas Place. It needs to be looked at as really a big transformation that needs to be managed correctly from every level. And that's having every stakeholder possible comment and actually understand how it'll operate, to putting together those management and programming plans so that on day one, it's not left to figure it out on its own. And finally, to implement projects. Live, Work, Learn, Play has the mandate that in our 14 months, we are going to be seeing implementation of this project and of these plans, the way that your Millennium Plan implemented the basic building blocks of your strong downtown today. And just for some more clarity, the working group is not something to replace your own decision-making authority. It's something that's meant to bring together the various sectors of your downtown and its constituency together to really structure it properly. We've implemented this structure in other cities. What you see in front of you is the VMC, or the Vaughan Metropolitan Center, which is the new downtown for Vaughan. This was their organization structure for bringing the entire city into alignment that the downtown was a priority and needed special status and special oversight. The city of Mississauga uses a very similar structure in their downtown collaborative. It's a way of making sure that the right stakeholders are at the table to make the important decisions a downtown needs. And with that, I clocked in at 20 minutes exactly.
I think the boardroom with the strategy group had President Obama and Biden, if you look at your graphic closely. So I know they're available in the months to come, so maybe we should aim for that. I've got starting the speakers list, I have Councillor Park, the ward councillor, I have Deputy Mayor Hubert, I have Councillor Squire, and Councillor Armstrong. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think a lot of the findings that we've heard with regard to drug use and street culture is not a surprise to any councillor here, and it's certainly not a problem that's unique to London. But I think it's a global problem that we need to come up with our own local solution for. Right now, the community is working on a community drug strategy, and Councillor Van Holst is council's representative on that. Locally, we've really seen successes when two agencies can converge their resources, and we've seen that with CMHA and London Police Services. When they've come together, they've been able to create efficiencies and, more importantly, help people where they need it and how they need it. I think we as a community need to collectively put our heads and dollars and strategies together to fix these important issues that our communities face. A solution isn't going to be overnight, and it's not going to be easy, but doing nothing is not an option for me. So like one of my colleagues said to me today, I don't want another think tank. I want to see some action on this. So I have prepared a motion that my colleagues do have with regard to coming together with a collaborative nature to address the problems that we see in Market Lane. And then, pardon me, I'm not speaking loud enough for my colleague over there. So a coordinated approach to resolving these issues that we see in our downtown and elsewhere in the community, because it is a community problem. With regards to a downtown coordinator, I view that role a little bit differently. And as we look forward to how we're going to be working with Shift Rapid Transit and implementing that, I think a coordinator for that project is quite important. So I would like to see a coordinator under the implementation office for rapid transit, because I think it's quite important that we look at that issue in a proactive lens instead of a reactive lens. When we look at projects like that reactively and how we're going to coordinate road closures, business interruptions, and those sorts of things, when we're in a reactive mindset, that's when our business community gets upset. That's when our residents get upset. That's when Londoners get upset. So I'd like to look at that in a proactive manner. So I've got a motion before my colleagues today, and I know I have a seconder.
Okay, the motion was distributed. Thanks very much, Councillor Park, and I'll just look for a seconder before we have any discussion on this. Okay, I have Councillor Helmer seconding that. That will come up on screen momentarily. What I'd like to do is move our way through the speakers list. I had intended, Councillor, to deal with some technical questions, and so this helps set the tone, I think, for where we're going since it was moved and seconded. There may be some technical questions. Why don't we deal with those right off the bat, and then we'll move into debate. I have Councillor Hubert, Squire, Armstrong, Usher. Did anyone just have questions, or are you interested in moving right into the debate at this time? Questions? Yeah. I'm just wondering, Councillor, if you could just give me a nod. Do you have questions, or do you want to enter into debate? Questions? Okay. So, Deputy Mayor Hubert, question? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I have to say, good job on getting it in 20 minutes, and I would like to actually digest some of the slides. But my question is this, and I'm tackling it from kind of a different angle, is, you know, I represent Ward 8, which is out on the west side of the city. And, you know, one of the things I hear sometimes from some of my constituents is, you know, downtown, they treat it like a drive-by. You know, they don't engage it. They go to the Knights game, and that's all well and fine, but they're in and out, and if they can get away with not paying for parking, they'd love to do that too. So if I was one of those people saying to you, why should I even think about downtown? What would your answer be to them?
I think the simplest answer I would give is that the downtown is the calling card of all of London. It's what appears in your postcards. It's what you will necessarily want to show to people. So not having a downtown in Toronto would be not having the place that people always view it as. This is what my city is, and this is what the outside sees your city is. So without a downtown, you are the same as everywhere else. You don't have that identity that makes you distinctly London. So by not supporting and continuing to see that identity grow and foster, you're not emerging in the region as a place where a lot of investment is going to come.
If I could just probe on that, I'm a Torontonian by birth and raised there. So I lived in Etobicoke. I still think it is a city in and of itself. And many of the people that I grew up with very rarely went downtown. I happened to be an urbanite. Our church was downtown, my music lessons were downtown, my father worked downtown. But do you have any sense, based on the research that you've done, what percentage of our 360 some odd thousand people actually engage or see the downtown as a place that they want to invest in?
To answer your question, no, I don't have a sense of the total number in that specific way, but I can say that I believe that when we look at the visitation to people coming to something like the London Knights, a vast majority of your city comes to that event, and they will say, well, I will come and I will eat in a restaurant, I might hang around after, I might visit the market, but then they don't have that outside of that one experience, which is that one anchor just existing on its own. I think that if there were more programming or things to do that were in a holistic fashion, they would engage with your downtown.
One final thing. So it reminds me of the marketing strategy that banks use. If you own or utilize more than 3 products, it's unlikely that you'll change your Visa card or your banking because it's just so much hassle to do all that, but you actually become their customer in a long-term phase. And I think that's a little bit of what I just heard you say.
Thank you. Councillor Squire, Armstrong, Usher, others? Councillor Armstrong has a technical question. Usher, we'll go to you next.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. I thought I heard the word earlier, GTA. Was I wrong? I don't know what the reference was to.
I cannot remember the exact reference, but I think the way in which I used it was to describe the fact that London and the identity that is emerging here is very specific to London in the entire GTA. So it creates an advantage for investment or unique experiences to come to London versus elsewhere in sort of the sea of development we see.
There's more. You made reference earlier to the city commitment. I think it was the first, second, or third slide. And can you sort of give me an understanding what you meant by the city commitment, like that we haven't been committed enough, or like?
I think the way in which that item for what's not working in the downtown came out from our discussions with stakeholders is that across the board, people recognize the City of London has made a lot of investment in capital into the downtown, but not necessarily the following piece, which is the long-term management and operations. So for things like Market Lane, the expression that was used was the orphan child, and that it was just turned over without an idea of how it will be run or operated in a holistic sense. That is something that is very real as a concern in stakeholders when it comes to a major project like Dundas Place. There's going to be a number of years of construction that comes down the road, and they're not sure that it's actually going to be wholesale in the end, if it's not managed properly, worth it, and that there will be interruption, as well as then they're not sure that the city will be on the other side to make sure that it is managed appropriately on the back end.
Okay, questions. Councillor Usher and then Helmer.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. From my perspective, it's very inspiring, and I agree with everything my colleague, Councillor Park, said. When you referred to the GTA, I thought you said something about people in the GTA, that's the way they see London in a certain way. So, in a sense, when the people in Toronto talk about London, sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. It depends on, but they still want to move here. So, I really appreciate the presentation through you, Mr. Chair. And to me, there are lots of other things that the downtown has to offer, and you probably put those in a different perspective because you didn't mention anything about the Forks of the Thames, which I see developing. You certainly mentioned Dundas and the parks and so on. I guess my one question that you did not bring up at all, and I wonder where they fit in, is the large percentage of seniors that we have in London. We've got a large percentage, and they fare downtown today. And some of them want to live downtown, some of them were just about ready to stay downtown. We also have a large, not as much as Toronto, but relatively speaking to other cities, a large diverse population who would like to make use of downtown without any fear of anything. So I just wonder if you gave any consideration of how those would fit in. We talk about the schools, feet on the ground, and developments. And some of those development hopefully would be for seniors and for people with diverse background who tend to stay away from the downtown. Can you address that?
Absolutely, through you, Mr. Chair. Both of those communities that you identified are absolutely important things, important people to bring into the downtown. I can't speak to the makeup of future development projects, but I would encourage them to look at every sort of person as being welcome in the downtown and being a person that the programming the downtown has needs to serve. The downtown has to be inclusive. It has to appeal to people across every sort of individual identity. It has to appeal to the entire population of London, since that's how you drive the maximum value of what a downtown is and drive the programming that we want to see in the downtown happen.
Still on questions, Councillor Helmer.
I'll save my comments till when we get to that portion. You've suggested a whole number of things that should be done. Do you have a sense of how much it will cost to do those things?
At this point, we suggested those things within the scope of what downtown London can do. Our recommendations were focused on them being able to make implementation happen without us necessarily being here for 14 months to help shepherd it through. So everything would be within their budget to be able to bring that forward, as is with them making the commitment to bringing us here for 14 months to help steer the working group and steer this process forward. I think that there would potentially be the need for partnership with other groups, as well as potentially the city, on things like the programming. And when you look at the list of 88 items, I can tell you that none of those are necessarily over-the-top expense. It's just being able to ensure that there's enough momentum and funding behind them to make sure that they can actually be implemented properly.
Very brief follow-up. There's one item, for example, you recommended this urban core coordinator, downtown coordinator, whatever you want to call it. The suggestion seemed to be that it's with the city, and I imagine downtown London's not suggesting they're going to pay for it.
No, they're not. That would be something for the city, but when we look at the way that the City of London is structured, I think there are people that can fill that role already without necessarily needing to hire someone new. There is a lot of intelligence within your city to start with. There just needs to be someone tasked with and the mandate of that role.
Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you. And through the chair, I had a question perhaps to staff just about the urban core coordinator and how that would fit in with the rapid transit implementation office.
So what I'm gonna do, do you want the presenter to answer that question? The motion came from a councillor.
I suppose that could be answered at another time, but I just wanted to see how this fit in and if staff thought this was the best way to go.
Let's divide the two technical questions for the presenter. We'll deal with that. I'll get you on the list for the debate, and once we debate the motion, we'll get you an answer, if that's all right. Okay. Anyone else? I have Councillor Cassidy and Councillor Armstrong. You've spoken already. You want to be added on the question list again? Okay, Councillor Cassidy.
I'm a little confused.
Is it related to the motion or is it related to the presentation?
It's related to the presentation. Okay, thank you, Your Worship. And so through you to staff, I'm wondering, I'm hoping that staff had a chance to see what's being proposed through this presentation. But it seems to me like a number of these things staff are already doing, and maybe there isn't a coordinated approach. I'm not saying we don't need that, but I just want I'm asking staff, are we doing a number of these things already? Are you doing a number of these things already?
Through the chair, I would believe that we could say, yes, there are things that we are doing, but if council wishes for us to put greater resources and effort into our interactions, we'd certainly be willing to do that. And I think the other thing that we're seeing through the presentations that we've had from the group that's here today is a desire to involve other agencies and bodies. And so certainly the efforts of various bodies independent can have a certain value, but when it's the coordination of more than others, sometimes it has a bigger impact. So we are doing some work. If council wants us to do more, we will. And do we see promise in working in a coordinated fashion? We appreciate the value of the downtown.
Councillor Armstrong, second round.
Thank you, and my question is very much along the same lines. This urban coordinator, and through you to
Councillor, if you want to, Councillor, just please hold off for a moment. If you want to speak to the motion and specifically the coordinator.
I thought I was questions.
This is questions on the presentation. Do you have questions on the presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I was.
Not about the motion, but about the presentation.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to our staff about this urban coordinator, do you have staff available right now that could commit to fulfilling what you understand as today this urban coordinator position?
Okay.
So there wouldn't be any additional costs?
Your question is about the motion that's before us. If you hang on for 1 minute, I can get you on the debate speakers list. This is specifically on the presentation.
Well, the presentation talked about an urban coordinator.
Okay. And the motion does as well. So let's get you your answer and let's move on. Okay. Let's get you your answer and move on, okay?
Sure. Thank you.
Through the chair, we don't have, this resolution's fairly new to us as well, and the mover and the seconder may have perspectives on the placement within the Rapid Transit Office. We might have a perspective on that as well, but we don't have a person in mind, and so if council wanted us to head in this direction, it could very well be an existing staff person, or it could be a new position.
Well, I'm hearing too, it could be a new position, which means additional costs, or it could be an existing person, obviously. So I need clarification, what would they
We'll
be
get to
looking
that
for?
during the debate, because now we're moving into the decision point, which is whether or not we move in this direction or not. So thanks for clearing that up. This is certainly an opportunity for you to enter into the debate. I have Councillor Squire and Helmer for the debate. Anyone else? Councillor Armstrong? Go ahead, Councillor Squire.
I have to tell you, this has been probably the most frustrating 15 minutes since I've been a councillor, and I hope I'll be able to explain to you why I'm so frustrated. First of all, this is not our report. This is a report that was prepared for downtown London. I hope my colleagues keep that in mind. Second thing is, we received this report by email. I just received it at 4:33 p.m. And I just get the feeling that everyone else in this building, a lot of people in the gallery and a lot of other people have read this report and received this report and have gone over this report, and I haven't even had a chance to look at it in detail, make any decisions with regard to it, evaluate it, or anything of that nature. So I am not today going to support a motion to take steps on a report that I haven't even had an opportunity to read. And I would caution my colleagues to maybe read the report. Let's go through it. Let's look at it before we start committing ourselves to taking steps. Now, I really am frustrated that in the preparation of this report, just so you know, the councillor from Ward 6 has worked downtown for 36 years. The councillor for Ward 6 has spent countless hours walking downtown and talking to people downtown. The councillor for Ward 6 represents many of the people that you're talking about that sit in Market Lane. They are my clients. They suffer severe mental disability. They come downtown because they're lonely and their lives have very little meaning. They have no place to go downtown. They have family won't even talk to them. I've been out on the streets with the people from the City of London, walking the streets, talking to those people, finding out who they are, finding out where they're from. Since I've been here, all I am seeing is report after report after report. The economic roadmap, the downtown plan, the mayor's task force on poverty. Now we've got another report. And let me assure you, it is getting us no closer to solving the problems of my clients. And the steps that are suggested in Clause B will get us no closer to solving the difficulties of my clients. It will not succeed. Let me tell you something. The Phil Squire Task Force has been trying to look at this, and I've contacted a gentleman from Woodstock who runs a restaurant there called Bullwinkles that operates in their downtown. Is a combination restaurant and training center. You go in there, I go in there and pay what I want for a meal. Someone who doesn't have enough money goes in there and pays what they can pay. Combined with that is a training center that trains those people how to cook. They have a place to go downtown. They have no place to go right now. I met with him and I said to him, has anybody from the City of London talked to you about this? No. I'm very frustrated. And this is, to me, I'm sorry, it's just another report. And it's going to provide no solace to the people who need help if I say to them, oh, they've got these, we passed a motion that we're going to clean up Market Lane. And they're going to say, well, what's wrong with Market Lane? I sit in Market Lane. I know I'm kind of scruffy, but I sit in Market Lane. So I don't want you to go clean up Market Lane and move my clients along and tell them they're not welcome there. I want you to go up to them and say, you're welcome in the City of London. So I'm just not with you on this, and I'm tremendously frustrated at this point with what the City of London is doing with regards to the problems facing our city. I wish you the best of luck with your report, but it's not the solution to the problems we have. The solution is the hard work being done on the ground by the people that I know that are doing work on the ground right now, the people who don't come and sit in the gallery, the people who don't sit on committees. So I'm happy to receive this report. I'm happy to look at it. I'm happy to read it, but I'm not prepared to support anything today. And I urge us not to do that, because I don't think these are these solutions.
Councillor Helmer.
Well, I think that was very well said by my colleague, Councillor Squire, and certainly I appreciate where he's coming from. And on the issue, especially around the substance of the presentation, like this is a very long presentation. I think there's 34 or 5 slides or something like that. And it is certainly not helpful to get this information, like that much information, all at once in the meeting and then have some expectation that decisions would be made immediately. It's not clear to me, what some of these things would cost, what exactly is meant by some of these directions. I want to second this particular motion because I do think there's some value in getting going on these fronts now. And I think if, there's issues around Market Lane specifically, and there's not the ability to deal with some of those issues now, I'm not convinced that there isn't, but if it needs a bit of a nudge, I'm happy to give a bit of a focused nudge on that issue. And I think it's, what I like about this motion is that it's talking about, first of all, supporting the people who are in Market Lane. And if it was phrased in a different way, to say like chase these people away and hopefully they'll find something better to do, I would not support that. And so I think that is, it's an important part. Obviously the issues that folks who have addictions or are homeless or have mental health challenges, these are not confined to Market Lane. We have them all over the city, and it's a citywide issue. But if there's something specific that needs to be done with Market Lane, I'm willing to support that. The second issue around the urban core coordinator, I think, and based on the kind of visits that I've had in places that have implemented rapid transit, it's very important that we get ahead of it and have a plan for how we're going to coordinate all these things and how we're going to support the business communities that are impacted all along those rapid transit corridors, which of course stretch all the way out to Wonderland, all the way up to Masonville, all the way down to White Oaks, and all the way out to Fanshawe in the east. And I think that part of it in particular, I think will be very important for the success of rapid transit. And I know we're working on this implementation piece already. It was in fact I who said perhaps we could have that part of this work is properly belongs in that area where we're gonna have transit-oriented developments coming forward along the corridor, all kinds of infrastructure coordination pieces that need to be handled. I'm not totally convinced that adding another person is really the solution to some of these problems, but I'm willing to look at it, and I think that having a report come back where we can fully look at what are the different ways of implementing that, what exactly would it cost, would it be a new person, would it be a shift of responsibilities and consolidation? So I understand where my colleagues are coming from in terms of like, maybe we don't be hasty, don't make too many decisions right now, and I certainly would support, I have to say, a referral to some future meeting. We spent a fair amount of time here just giving the presentation, and I think if people need some time to think about it, I would support that. I think this issue on Market Lane, though, if there's something that needs to be done there in terms of giving civic administration some direction, obviously it's a lot of agencies that work with the folks who are in Market Lane. And I think some of the just straightforward things like cleaning up the ground on Market Lane, like that's a city responsibility, and that's something that we should be doing so that it's a great place to hang out for everybody who's using it. And I think some of those things are directly under our control. So I hope my colleagues would support C at least, and then if we need to refer the discussion around some of these bigger picture things, I think that's totally appropriate. This is just saying, let's have a report back. I do think perhaps narrowing it down to say downtown and the rapid transit corridors, that would better encapsulate sort of the whole scope of it. And I think that's not exactly what the consultant is recommending. So that's it for the motion. I will say for the consultant that it can be a bit frustrating to have folks from out of town come in and talk to us about the problems that we've got in the city. And we certainly have a lot of that, diagnosing the issues. And I appreciate that there's some attempt to get at solutions as well. But I take a bit more of a sort of strengths and capacities kind of approach, which is there's lots of great things happening downtown all throughout London. London is a really great city, and I think when we're getting at fixing things and making some changes, sometimes they get lost, all these great strengths. And I know the presentation tried to balance it a little bit, but just the fact that it's very focused on downtown specifically. And then it's very easy to say everyone needs to just coordinate better and that's going to solve all the problems. No, a lot of times what's required is a lot more money. And, you need to put more resources into something to actually make a big difference for people. And it's not just a matter of everybody doing their jobs better. So, that's why I asked about the cost. I think some of these things have merit, but I need to see the details about who's going to do what and when and these kind of pieces. So I hope my colleagues will support C. And then if there's somebody interested in referring the other parts, I would support that.
Councillor Helmer, thank you. Councillor Armstrong and Salih. Gotcha.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. And Your Worship, I guess the thing, obviously, I've been here for a number of years, and I've been here when we made many of the investments in the downtown, from the convention, from Budweiser to the library to Fanshawe, and the list goes on and on and on. Hundreds of millions of dollars, I'm sure now. And we can continue to invest. And I guess the thing is, I think London's a great place to live. I'm not sure if Torontonians were surveyed and asked what they think of London, but I think London's a great place. Obviously, we have all these facilities, low crime. Yes, we have our problems on the street, just like any major urban area. But I dare to compare. That's why, as someone said earlier, and it's a fact, people in Toronto who want to downsize, London's one of the cities they look at, because it's an affordable, safe city. So let's keep that in mind. And Your Worship, I guess the thing is, we've had a lot of initiatives that our administration has brought forward over the years to deal with some of these issues, like London Cares. Has it had an impact? Has it had some success? Has it made a difference? And I want to pose the question through you to our administration. Dealing with mental health, dealing with people in the downtown and so on. We know there's organizations like the Mission working out there, the Salvation Army and so on. But I want to ask through you to our administration whether or not London Cares, it's a program you brought forward to deal with some of these issues. Has it made a difference?
Through you, Your Worship, there's been a number of studies about the impact of London Cares. We are aware of the on-the-ground difference that that program has made, particularly with individuals who are homeless. We can demonstrate to you some of the research that has been done around that particular program. That's not to say, though, that, and there are recent investments that this council has made to improve and support people from a housing first perspective. So there's a number of steps that have been taken that are being taken to try to address the issue. That's not to say that there aren't steps that could be taken from a coordination perspective that would help to address some immediate pressure points.
Thank you, Worship. Well, obviously, we've heard that the program we have out there is making a difference, has made a difference, and will continue to make a difference. To say that we're going to eliminate all the problems in the downtown, I don't think that that will ever happen. There will always be people in the downtown that, you know, may use drugs or may find themselves homeless. But we have programming out there to deal with that, and we will continue, I'm sure, to invest in helping those in our community who need our help. And in any event, Your Worship, I guess the thing is, I think the one councillor mentioned about timing and the shortness of getting the report, and I have a lot of questions, and I don't think they'll all get answered today, because I'm hearing on one side, maybe our staff could take this position on along with the work that they're already doing, or maybe there could be a budget for an urban core coordinator. I don't know which way that's going to go, so I would have liked to have known whether there's no cost or if there's cost, and if we have staff out there that aren't already have their have lots to do. And so I guess the thing is, I'm happy to look at this at another time. I'd like to hear back from our staff on these issues. I'm assuming that they've gotten this information the same time as the councillors have received it. I don't see any reason why we can't get more information and look at this further, and not just dismiss it outright here today. But as I've said earlier, we have, as a council and previous councils, continue time after time to invest in the downtown. So it's not a situation where we haven't been active, where we haven't been supportive, quite the opposite. And that's gone on for a lot of years. But, there comes a point where, the business people, the property owners, and so on have to step up to the plate and take some more ownership. That it just can't always be the council writing another check. And so I just want to make sure that that message is out there from me, that there's not an endless pot to go to money. And so in any event, Your Worship, I would like to see our staff come back with some opinions on this so that we can make a more informed decision and not so hastily done.
Thanks, Councillor. You're just at 5 minutes. Thank you for your comments. I'll go to Councillor Salee, Ridley, Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for all the presenters and some of the conversations that's been had before. I can see where folks are coming from, and I can definitely appreciate some of the concerns listed, and I want to do something as soon as possible as well. I think for me, just hearing some of my colleagues, I think the best approach would be all of us united in trying to address the concerns. And I know the seconder I know had indicated an interest of possibly referring it. So I was wondering if it would be at all possible to say we would, through the committee chair, have a special SPPC meeting relatively soon, sometime maybe November, December, I'm not sure, where we can also invite the community and grassroots people be able to come in and weigh in, and at that time, we can have a staff report that speaks to this. I do have a question around, for example, I'm not too supportive of it coming from the Rapid Transit Implementation Office, because I feel as if there's one side that'll be business-minded versus another another kind of mindset that you need, which is around addictions and mental health. So I'm not sure who should be kind of leading that coordination or who should be talking about it. And so for me to make a kind of a decision right now is somewhat of a challenge. And I know some of you know I have a military background, but when I hear things like green zone, that sounds a little too strong for me. I'm sure you could probably draw those connections of what other green zones look like in other parts of the world. And, for me, that sounds very much of an aggressive approach and not kind of necessarily the approach that I want to see, where we're more compassionate. I know not necessarily that maybe is the case or not, but I just think that kind of terminology kind of puts people off, I guess, and for me in particular. So I'm not sure if the mover is willing to, be amenable, or if I need to refer that, just because I have concerns with it coming from the Rapid Transit Implementation Office. I know the city manager is working on Lean Six Sigma. I don't know if we're going to find some savings or find some opportunity to be able to draw some resources from different areas. So I pose that question through the chair to Councilor Park.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Park, did you want to respond to the suggestion of a little amendment?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Acting Chair. I'm happy to refer B. C, I feel that we should move forward with some urgency.
Perfect. So then I guess with that, I'd either refer B, unless the mover can do that. I'm not sure, just from procedural side. So I'm more happy to refer.
And what would you be referring B for?
For staff to come back with a report. And I'm hoping we can strike a special SPPC meeting so we could just have all our focus on just this one topic, because it is significant. So I'm sure the chair will figure out a date in November or December, wherever the where time permits, to have this conversation, invite the community, invite the grassroots folks, and so we can all be engaged with this conversation. Because I'm not sure if it comes from the Rapid Transit Police or other areas. So.
It's really the location of it in the Rapid Transit Office that's the issue for you. Is that right, Councillor? Yes. Yeah, okay. Okay, I'll look to the mayor.
Thanks. I know there were a couple of questions asked, and I thought instead of speaking from the chair, I'll speak from this seat in case it's considered debate. I think that we all know that our downtown is our calling card to the world. We all know that our downtown is an economic engine. The numbers don't lie. It represents a very small fraction of our overall community geographically, in the 0.2% area. And it's almost 5% of all assessment, of all taxes collected. And so it is an economic engine. It does require investment. And so I'm fully prepared to support the motion that's before us. I think that we're being a little bit too careful here in terms of debating whether or not we need to move forward on B. B essentially is a referral anyway, back for a report. And so when we're saying things like, we don't need reports, we need action, and then we consider supporting a referral, I think we need to think twice about that. Or I want to move forward on this as quickly as possible, and so let's refer it. I think that's what we all agree, that we need more information before supporting a position that is funded through a mechanism that's going to be identified. And so as I read B, I was prepared to support B because it's asking for a report back for additional information so we can enter into debate. If committee members are more comfortable with language that says refer this to civic administration for a report back so we can have a debate and make some decisions, then I'm fine with that too, because I think that takes us to the exact same place. We're not going to make a decision that's this big tonight after receiving a report from a community partner so quickly. So I'm comfortable with the mover who has accepted this as a friendly amendment. We'll have some additional information, and I'll just speak to the question proposed by Councillor Salee. Do we hold a special meeting? We'll see about that. I know that we've got a pretty heavy agenda. This is a priority. We'll make sure that we get it on one of the SPPCs that's coming up soon. But as you all know, when circulated invitations to come to special meetings, it can be difficult to align schedules in short notice. And so we'll treat this as a priority. We'll deal with it as quickly as we can. I'd like to see it dealt with in November, very latest December. And we'll ensure, just like we ensure at every meeting, that the public is notified and has an opportunity to be involved in the discussion as well. Thank you.
I'm looking, Mr. Zudema, did you want to weigh in on this or provide any context?
Well, we're always interested in assisting council in any way we can, but I think that in as much as while council might have a meeting coming up, we need to back up when that report gets delivered, and I know that council likes to get reports in time, and they like reports to be reasonable in terms of a reasonable work product. And so I just, I guess as a friend to the council, am reminding the council that in as much as you might set a date for a meeting, we need to get a report, we need to submit it within a certain amount of time. So the more time that we have, obviously, you know, and we would endeavor to be as reasonable as possible, to come back as quickly as possible. But if you set a real short time frame, that will have an impact in terms of what we can give you.
Thank you, Mr. Zudema. To the mover, there was some suggestion around how we want to shape this. Have you given some consideration to change the language here?
Yes, Mr. Acting Chair, I'd articulated the last time I spoke that I'm happy to refer B, if that's the language that my colleagues are comfortable with, but C, I think we need to move forward with immediately.
I'll ask the clerk to make that change, that B be referred and the report come back.
Is the seconder okay with that?
Is the seconder okay with that? Councillor Helmer, you seconded?
Yeah, I just have a brief question, maybe it's gonna be helpful. So I know we're already working on the Rapid Transit Implementation Office. There's some schedule for when that is gonna come forward anyway. Perhaps people would be okay with just directing the civic administration to consider whether this could work within that and come forward at that same timeline that's already underway. That may solve the problem, which is, you know, we're not creating some separate thing, it's already underway, perhaps it will fit. I'm also okay with just dropping it entirely, and Councillor Park and I can bring it forward at some future meeting with, you know, we already talked about it now. We don't need to necessarily even refer it now. So I would just ask perhaps Mr. Soldo or somebody could speak to when that report is planned to come forward anyway, because it's already, that's work is already underway.
I understand that Mr. Soldo has indicated that that report's coming forward on the 29th of November. And I think the other thing that would be helpful to the administration, I mean, I'm reading it as it is within the proposed resolution, that the decision is implicit as to where that person would be located. And if council is comfortable with giving that direction, we're comfortable in taking that direction. But if council was also looking at other options for where that person could be framed in terms of what office, there might be other options as well. But if council is comfortable with what's indicated here, that's helpful to us, because then we won't spend time in looking at other places.
Okay, so Councillor Ridley, Morgan, Van Holst, and I actually have you on the list a second time, Councillor Helmer. I have Councillor Squire as well, so we'll deal with that as the second debate list. Councillor Ridley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the risk of sounding obtuse, C is not clear to me. Can someone tell me what the issues present in Market Lane are?
I'm going to ask the mover of the motion to provide it with that information as you're considering your decision.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the presenters indicated, there are issues in Market Lane that surround street culture, drug use, and those sorts of issues. And I think that it's something, as I said earlier, it takes a coordinated approach to deal with those issues. And it's an issue about everyone feeling safe in Market Lane. So that's why I proposed a coordinated approach, so the people get the supports that they need where they need it.
Okay, so my next question, Mr. Chair, is for the civic administration, and I wonder if someone could read C and explain to me how they would operationalize that direction. Like, can you break it down? What does this direction mean to you? What will happen operationally?
Through the chair, our initial efforts will be to bring together a number of different organizations that are already supporting various people who are visiting Market Lane on a regular basis. Try to bring all the bodies together to talk about doing that in a more coordinated fashion. That's the initial step. There are other aspects in this resolution that deal with programming as well, and we'd need to give some more consideration to that. But the first effort is to bring together the various organizations, and there are many, Councillor, that we would bring together to talk about how we might coordinate our efforts in a bit better way, to support people in a better way. And so those are some of the initial steps, and then we would break it down from there. That's my initial reaction, having seen this evening.
Thank you. I think I'm going to risk sounding combative with the mover, and I'm going to be careful not to do that, because I think that we have some very significant issues around homelessness, around mental health, around drug addiction. But I'm not understanding how the motion here targets one specific area and how we operationalize that and what happens. And I hear a lot of bureaucrats speak, with all due respect, about what this means, but what I'm hearing between the lines is we have people there that we don't want there. We're going to find out a way to get everyone together and move the people. So if I'm incorrect, I need that clarified before our...
I'm going to look to the mover of the motion to provide that clarity. Just
Through the chair, that...
And I'll do that. I'll go to Ms. Livingston afterwards. Go ahead.
Through the chair, that is woefully inaccurate. There is no intention of mine to move people out of anywhere. It's to ensure that our citizens have the supports that they need where they need it. Currently, these individuals are in Market Lane, and they're not getting the support that they need. And that's a detriment to us as a community wholeheartedly. In terms of operationalizing this motion, I have confidence in our civic administration, just as I have confidence in our community stakeholders. They need direction to be empowered to work together to achieve success on this problem.
Okay. So did you want Ms. Livingston to address your question as well? You still have the floor.
If she has additional to add, and then I'd like to put back to the mover, why just Market Lane? Are the issues only present there? And perhaps that's...
Sure. Okay. Ms. Livingston?
Through the chair, I just wanted to emphasize that our efforts would not be about moving people along. This was about trying to make sure that people have the necessary supports to receive the services and help that they need. It's not to say people sit in Market Lane all the time. It's meant to be like that. This is about supporting people appropriately. So I just want to be explicitly clear about that.
And I'm sorry, I'm feeling really, really dense. I'm trying to understand, do people only go to Market Lane? Like, is this the only place that there's a problem? I'm wondering why it's identified here. And I would love to support a motion similar that says everywhere that we have these issues, but I'm trying to understand, is this a congregating place? Is it amplified? Is it worse than other areas of the city? Is it the worst example, or I'm not sure.
Let's look to the mover of the motion.
Sure. What's been pointed out is that this is certainly a concentrated area. It's also a piece of civic infrastructure that it is incumbent upon the City of London to maintain. And it's also incumbent on the City of London to ensure that the individuals have the supports where they need it, when they need it.
Yeah, I'm going to listen to the rest, and if I have anything else, I'll let you know.
Councillor Morgan, Van Holst, and Usher on the first round.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I too have been very frustrated with the process, and so I'm going to only talk about a couple of things in my comments. I haven't read the report either. I got a lot of questions about it. In fact, I was happy we got the slides emailed to us because I've been flipping through them as we've been talking, and there are lots of things that were skipped in the presentation that obviously there's a lot more detail about in the report with the 80 some odd recommendations that I haven't seen. And I know that we want to do things right away, and we want to tackle things, we don't want to wait, but I haven't even read the report yet. And so the kinds of questions that I have I think C is a great thing to do. You know, I want to help people as much as possible. But the report talks about, you know, these things called green zones, and they're a little more expansive, like Councillor Ridley was talking about. It certainly includes Market Lane, but also areas like Victoria Park. I don't really 100% understand what that means. I certainly support the notion that you don't want to just push people to the next street over, that you actually want to help them. And so I respect the intent of the motion, but I'm also in a spot where, you know, if I could read the whole report, I might understand better kind of the concept of these green zones and provide a more holistic support to what is being asked in C than I otherwise would. And I know that the ward councillor and the mayor and some others have had the opportunity to engage in the process and the development of such a report. I haven't had that advantage, so I don't know what's in it. So I'm sure that they have some insight that I don't, but I would prefer to make my decisions based on that insight. With that, and I want to give one example of something that I would raise a lot of questions about. One of the weaknesses of considerations of downtown London in the SWOT analysis is uncertain political support for downtown. And beyond that, in what's not working in downtown, the city commitment. And, you know, I think back to our budget process and the investments we've made. I think of our CIP program and the amount of money that we spend in the downtown. Every time a building goes up, we invest about $10 million in subsidization of development. That's why you see the population growing. We have a phased-in tax program downtown that allows a transition for those who want to invest in moving people downtown. We have committed significant amount of money to Dundas Place, and I think that's an important investment in downtown, and I supported that. We have potential investments in the back to the river. We support downtown London, and you know, I think we can do all this. So I'm unsure if there isn't, you know, commitment to downtown or there isn't political support. I'm not sure, you know, the pieces we're missing. If it is C, and that's what we're missing, then that's great. Let's tackle those sorts of things. But I'm a little unclear, having not read the report, on where our gaps are. And I think that's really important for us to understand, because if that's what the perception is, that's really important for us to not only understand but tackle. But I feel like every time we've had the opportunity to make a significant investment in downtown, you know, we've considered it fully, we've taken it, and we've tried to move it forward. So if there are other things we need to be doing, I'd like to know that. But I would like to read the report first. So I don't mind referring these things for consideration later. I'd prefer to weigh in on whether I'd support them at that time, because I'd like to read the report first. I'd like to have the opportunity, even offline, to engage with downtown London and others who are involved in the report and understand some of these components further. The one caution I would have with the way that we're referring B right now is I actually prefer what Mr. Zunema said about having some flexibility. I actually think there might be some merit with incorporating it into the Rapid Transit Implementation Office, but I'm not sure if that's the right decision. I think that, you know, I'm not sure if this is more economic development or whether it's more integrate with rapid transit. I know that it's been said we need a multifaceted approach, and I'd like to know how that fits best. But I certainly like rapid transit to be a consideration that we look into, that implementation committee. But I'm not sure that I want the restriction to give that explicit direction that it has to land there, which is the way that I read the motion currently. So as much as I don't want to have to say it, I prefer referring both of these components, because I think that maybe we can do a more holistic approach on C, not just tackle Market Lane. But if that's what we need to do after I've read the report, then I'm happy to support that, if that's what I feel is clear. But I haven't had an opportunity to read that and engage with multiple people. I haven't even had an opportunity to engage with the ward councillor in a detailed way on this as well, because I think she has some insights on this that I don't have, and I would love to have that discussion. So I appreciate that we want to move forward with action. My preference is to just, you know, take a one cycle step back, read the report, engage with some others, and then tackle some of these issues how we can. And I think that's why the debate's been so all over the map, is because we're trying to debate slides that we're flipping through on a report that we haven't read, with some direction that might be very valuable, and no one wants to toss aside, but they're not really sure what to do with it. So I think, you know, let's just take a one step back approach and deal with this after we've all had a chance to consider it in more detail.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Holst has kindly taken his name off of the speakers list. We'll go to Councillor Usher. That's the last speaker on the first round. Go ahead.
Well, thank Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been listening carefully to the debate, and I also listened to the presentation. And I have to say that I'm a little lost with respect to the B and the C at this point in time. I thought that because I don't see, I see this related and then I don't see it related to the presentation. I see the presentation as a very impressive presentation to do with downtown. And a lot of the things that we have considered in the past, I think that this made it very holistic for us. And there's a light, there's a light at the end of the tunnel with that. But with respect to the motion on the floor, both B and C, this may be, B may be something that could carry on forward with some of the ideas in that report. And I don't have a problem with it, but I don't feel that, I feel that we should leave it to staff to just tell us how it could be incorporated either in the implementation committee that we have on the side, which is part of council and part of LTC, and or there might be somebody within staff who, as we progress with the BRT, that person will ensure that all of these coordinations take place. So I don't have a problem with referring it to staff to come back and tell us how they're going to do that. I'm not sure that I see a rush in it, but perhaps by the time Mr. Solder comes with his report, that might be an appropriate time if he could identify it. With respect to the market lane, I got a little concerned about pointing out the market lane, but the explanation that was given to Councillor Ridley, that's fine if that's what it is, but I don't want us to rush into market lane and start chasing people out and doing a whole lot. And I know, but that's the implication we all got until the explanation began to evolve. And I do appreciate the fact that we're getting the evolution of the explanation, because I don't know if we need to say, yes, go ahead with doing this, or telling us a way of doing this. I'm not sure. I'm quite prepared to say, okay, with respect to the request here, but I just want us to be very, very careful that it's not that we're chasing people away from anywhere whatsoever, whether it's off down the street, because all we're going to do is to chase them on another street down not too far away. So those are my comments, and but I want to be sure that that we are changing that to referring it to civic administration for this report. Thank you.
Yeah, we're doing that. Okay, I have Councillor Squire on second round, and then Councillor Helmer. Anyone else?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I want to just go back to the market lane issue, and I want to talk about London Cares, and I don't know if anybody's aware of this. One of the things I did was I spent a day with London Cares, walking around the downtown with them, and one of the things we did was go into Market Lane. And I went there with a worker, and here's what we did. We would approach people, we would sit with them, we would talk to them. We would say, what's going on? Where are you from? Do you have a place to live? Do you need somewhere to eat? Do you need health care? Is there some way that we can help you? We met one gentleman there who was inappropriately dressed in a parka in September. And we found out that he's a guy that London Cares had been trying for months to get him into a residence, but he was a street guy, and that's what he wanted to do, was to be on the street, and he enjoyed sitting in Market Lane. He wasn't causing any problems. Now, if someone is selling drugs in Market Lane, we have a police force that can deal with that particular issue. If assaults are occurring, we can deal with that issue. My concern is this, and I've heard it before, I haven't heard it today. The issue is there's people sitting and hanging out in Market Lane that we don't want sitting and hanging out in there. Now, I know everybody said today, oh no, we're not worried about that. That's okay. They can sit there. Well, that's okay, but that's not what this says. It says the issues in Market Lane. And that's a pretty broad concept. Is it one of my clients who's come downtown for the day? And I go back to my other point. You have to provide them with a place to go. If you show those people that you're around Market Lane all the time, here's what they will do. They will go to another place and do exactly what they are doing. In Ward 6, in what people do, those persons who may be in Market Lane, they camp out along the river. And I get calls saying, there's people under the bridge at Oxford, camping out. There's people along the river camping out, Phil. There's needles everywhere. And London Cares, God bless them, goes, helps those people out, takes the needles to a safe place. I don't understand what we're going to do that is so different. We have a police force, we have London Cares, and I have to say to Ms. Livingston, they're doing a fantastic job. I spent the day with them. If you think that you're going to have a Market Lane that is going to be the way you want Market Lane to look, I'm sorry, I'm not sure that's going to happen. And if you do accomplish that, those people will go somewhere else, unless you find a place downtown where they're welcome, where they are allowed to be. So I don't agree with this. I'm sorry, I just don't. All of my experience, all my knowledge, all my on-the-ground work tells me this is not the right approach.
Okay, I have Councillor Helmer.
Well, Councillor Squire certainly gave me a lot to think about there. I do think it's important to recognize all the good stuff that is going on. And I didn't want to frankly dwell on it because there are a lot of good services that we're already providing in the City of London that are helping people, and London Cares is one of them. And Councillor Squire is certainly right about that. At the health unit, as you know, I'm the chair of the health unit, and the health unit is leading the community drug and alcohol strategy. And, you know, I think it's making some progress building on what was done. That's where London Cares came from in the first place, was the last time we dealt with the community response to addictions. And there's certainly a lot of things that need to be done on this front. And this is just, we're talking about literally the one manifestation of a very big problem that certainly is not going to be solved by any resolution we're passing here tonight when we're looking at it. This is just one particular area. I do want to recognize too that in my own ward, as Councillor Squire's got, there's different places where you'll see similar manifestations of this kind of problem, where you have people who don't have other places to go and are not welcome other places, and they'll find a place where they can hang out, and it happens in my ward, it happens in all over the city. And, you know, I think the key part in the resolution is about trying to support those folks. I do think over time where people want to congregate and hang out can change, and sometimes you need to put a little bit more resources. And our agencies that work around this issue, the police and London Care, they know that a lot better than we do. They know where these areas kind of pop up. There are some things though, that in Market Lane, for example, that civic administration, the City of London, is really responsible for. So for example, if you walk through there and there's like lots of graffiti, or you know, the ground is really dirty, frankly, of all, one of the places that is one of the best sort of piece of civic infrastructure that we've built in a little while, it's in some of the worst shape of all, you know, walk down the sidewalk and it just doesn't look good. And that's really our responsibility to clean that up. You know, I think we got to own those pieces that are our responsibility. Makes it a better place for everybody. Similarly around the programming, you know, I've gone down there at nighttime and they have a salsa and Market Lane event happening. I think there's some good things that are happening in terms of programming, but it's never been clear to me who programs that space, you know, who's responsible for it, how you do that. And I think maybe there's some things that need to be done on that front as well. We'd be kidding ourselves if we thought that dealing with just one specific geography is making a huge difference in terms of the overall problem that we've been talking about around addictions and homelessness and mental health. We've got other things underway that I think will help on that regard. But I do think that the fact that we've got other things going on and that this is not the whole solution doesn't mean we should not say, okay, but in this one particular area, there's some things we need to do. And I still am not totally convinced that we need a resolution to actually do that. I think our civic administration has really heard that in the discussion tonight. I think if a resolution is necessary to nudge that forward and get people to pay a little bit of extra attention to it, good. But I don't think London Cares is going to be surprised to hear that there's additional supports required from people in Market Lane, nor do I think the police are going to. We just had a story from the consultant about, I suspect, the chief of police's own wife getting out in front of Market Lane and having an issue there. So I think that I think we should support it because I do think some things should happen relatively soon. I do think we should refer the other one in B, which I said before.
Deputy Mayor Hubert.
Thank you. Interesting discussion. Like Councillor Squire, I've walked this strip more times than I can probably count over the last 16 or 17 years particularly, having had my office on Dundas Street. And, you know, urban issues are, in one sense, I'm glad we're having this debate. It's good for us to talk about it. It's good for us to bring it into the open. But also, when we talk about it, sometimes the way we talk about it can actually enhance the stigmatization of folks, and we need to be careful along that. And I think I hear that caution in some of my colleagues. And we don't want to be moving people around. We want people to become a part of the fabric. And over the years, I've had and I'm going to use the word, the privilege of knowing by name many of the folks that sit in various places across downtown London. And I have interesting conversations with them. And we see each other around, and we salute each other and greet each other by name. And I would say that we're friends. They see people as a safe place, a place that there's going to be no harm for them, and they're people. And we need to enhance our sense of their peopleness, if I could use that word, and their humanity. That being said, activation of the street is the way that we get there. It's not about moving a group of people or addressing a particular target, but it's about activation. But to the proposal before us, particularly the presentation, I'm appreciative of the fact that Downtown London came and gave us this presentation. We didn't give them an easy ride the last time they were here, to be honest. And they've gone and figured out how they're going to move this forward. And they're not asking our permission. They are moving forward, and we need to probably spend a bit more time congratulating them and thanking them for that. I understand that I didn't really think the referral was necessary because it's an ask back to administration, but I'll be supporting that, because I think the key in terms of community development, in terms of addressing both the activation and the breadth of the proposal here, our London Place initiatives that are going to come forward, is not the responsibility of any one particular body, but it's about how we coordinate and integrate and leverage the supports that are already there. It's about how we have conversations with LEDC and Downtown London and business owners and small business startups with Tech Alliance and whatever it happens to be. It's about that integration. I'm good. That's the critical part. And when there's social issues, it's not just kicking it over to agencies that might have the mandate to deal with social issues. That's not how you solve it, because all that does is silo the issue. And that's not how it happens. Actually, how you solve those issues is where there's not just a Phil Squire talking to people, but there's actually 300 or 400 people that are coming by and saying hello to that individual on a regular basis, not because they're a person that might have a issue, but because they're a person who is a Londoner and that we're caring about. So it's that integration. So my support, just 30 seconds of leeway.
I'm going to have to ask you to move an extension if you've got more.
Is the integration.
Do you need an extension?
I'll move an extension just because I
Okay.
want to finish my sentence.
I'm just trying to make a point
Thank
here.
you,
I'd like you to
Councillor.
finish your sentence, but you're just past 5. Okay. Extension moved by Councillor Helmer, seconded by Councillor Van Holst. All those in favor, go ahead. As I mentioned, you're at 5 minutes.
It's rare, okay? So it's the integration and the coordination of the services, and whether it be engineering or whether it be planning or wherever it happens to fit. That's the critical element here, and it's leveraging the resources, not necessarily adding resources.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong and then Cassidy.
Well, I'll get back to, and I'll only talk about C. Again, I think the thing is, and I can't remember when was the last time we had a presentation on London Cares. I know we've had a number of them, but I can't recollect how far back. And maybe that's something that we should have, that C should really be perhaps referred to CAPS, so that we can have an update on what London Cares is doing, and in particular, what impact it's having on Market Lane in that area. Also, the housing initiatives, though I think we just had an update on housing like very recently, but I guess the thing is how our staff is coordinating all these different initiatives, and specifically ask them to address, you know, what they've done in the Market Lane area, because I don't think they've targeted just the Market Lane, but rather the whole downtown. And I think this is something that really needs to go to CAPS, so that we can sort of get a better understanding of whether there's been a coordinated approach to some of these issues, and if not, how could we improve? If so, because I'm sure there's been, how we could improve on them. And because I see C and B as kind of, well, they both have an effect on each other. I think C is also a standalone. So I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to look at seeing that portion go to those departments that are responsible for C, and including, I guess, police, because they're not part of the city administration. But and then having something come before CAPS. But I'll throw that out there, and I don't know how whether or not that was already the plan or not. So through you to staff, if they can address sort of that idea.
Yeah, so you're asking for a referral of C instead of direction? And so just before we move in that area, I'm just gonna look for a seconder. If there isn't a seconder, then I think we'll just deal with the motion that we have before us. So I don't see a seconder. So I think what we'll do is move on. I have Councillor Cassidy. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy with the motion that's on the floor. I understand if people want to separate them out, and that's fine, but, and I'm sorry, I'm not 100% tonight. Still working about 80, just below 85 now. I understand there are a lot of there's a lot of really good work going. I know from having been involved with the poverty panel, all of the good work that's going on in London. And I like C because it's talking about coordinating those things. So rather than, and that's an issue that identified itself very early on in the process of the poverty panel, that there are a lot of really good agencies out there doing some really good things in London, but they are doing them sort of in that silo direction. So I like this because it talks about coordinating the groups that are already, and I agree, Market Lane is not the only place where people have gathered that perhaps need care and attention from the city. But I agree with Councillor Helmer. Let's get started on this. Let's get going. I don't want to refer this back. I want something to start happening now. I also have people in Ward 5 along the river that camp along the river, that set up shelters along the creek, and they'll stay there as long as until somebody moves them along. But we do have to help where we can, and I want to start now, and then we'll, go to the other areas in the city that need our attention. But I just want to get started.
Okay, thank you. I have no additional speakers. Would the mover like to sum up just before I call the question? Just before we go there, I have a question from Councillor Ridley. We'll go to you, Councillor Park, right afterwards.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear the sum up, but I wonder if it makes sense to put C and B as separate.
Yep, there's been a request to split the motion. We'll do that. Go ahead, Councillor Park.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be brief. I don't want to repeat myself for a lot of the debate that's already occurred. I'm happy to refer B and get some good information back from staff on how that might look and how it might work going forward. And with C, there definitely is some urgency. And as Councillor Cassidy just spoke, this is not the only area of the city, but it is the first point to pilot how we're going to manage this problem citywide.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And what we'll do now is call the question. Let's deal with
Do A first.
I want to do A first, Councillor Helmer.
I just want to clarify, I know it kind of was silent, but the B has been changed. I just want to make sure everyone sees it before it disappears from the screen, because it's different than what was up there for most of the discussion.
So I'll make sure that you look at your monitors before you vote. Thank you for that, Councillor Helmer. And we're going to deal with A, we'll do B, and then C. So let's receive the report. Seconded by Councillor Morgan. Let's call the question. We're voting.
Closing the vote and the motion carries 12-0.
Okay. And B. Be up in a moment. By Councillor Parks, seconded by Councillor Van Holst. Any discussion? Let's call the question. We're voting.
Closing the vote and the motion carries 12-0.
And C. Moved by Councillor Parks, seconded by Councillor Van Holst. Any discussion on C? Let's call the question. We're voting.
Closing the vote and the motion carries 10-2.
Great. Thank you very much for that debate. Thanks to our guests for coming tonight for the presentation. And I know that there was a good deal of discussion here about how we can move forward. I know that this has been referred to a meeting in the near future, and we'll make some more decisions from there. So thank you very much. Enjoy your evening. You're welcome to stay. We shouldn't be here past 11. Let's move then to the scheduled item. This is item 2. This is the PPM for amendments to consolidate fees and charges bylaw. I'll look to staff for a quick introduction, and then we'll move forward with the PPM, followed by debate.
Thank you, Your Worship. This represents our annual report where we provide updates to our fees and charges. This year we are including fees and charges for 2018 and 19 as well as 17 to reflect the multi-year budget. The report outlines briefly some of the changes that are being proposed. Any changes that are before you represent cost recovery for the service that's being provided based on increases that the city has encountered over the last year or so.
Thank you. We'll start the speakers list. Councillor Salee. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know I don't have something that's not necessarily directly related to this, but I have a motion that I believe is going to come back in November, December that speaks to, maybe I'll just refer to Livingston, because I think she may be able to touch on that, because there was a previous motion that was approved by council that talks about the recreation fees and things and lowering costs, so.
Great. Let's do the PPM first. We'll pick that up right afterwards. Okay. So if I could have a motion then to open the public participation meeting. Moved by Deputy Mayor Hubert, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Any discussion? Let's call the question. Voting. Okay, I'll look up in the gallery and see if there are any individuals here who are interested in speaking to the report. I'll ask again, and I'll ask a third time. There are none, so let's look for a motion then to close the PPM. Moved by Councillor Salee, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Any discussion? Let's call on closing the PPM. Okay, let's call the question. We're voting.
Councillor Squire? This is a vote to close the public participation meeting. Closing the vote and the motion carries 12-0.
Okay, speakers list. We'll go to Councillor Salee, Armstrong, Van Holst, Squire, Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just, I guess I'll reiterate my question. I know I had a previous motion that was supported by council around lowering fees. It's not necessarily directly related to this, but I know I just had people spike some interest with some of the recent conversations with the fee structures. I think Ms. Livingston will be able to speak to this a little bit better, so maybe I could refer that to the chair.
Yes, and through the chair, we were asked to consider how we can improve access to community centers through either low-cost or no-cost access. There are a number of mechanisms already. We're reviewing those, looking at what else we might do, independent of whatever fee structure might be in place, and that report will be coming forward before the end of the year.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Worship. Your Worship, I had an opportunity to go through all the fees, and I was sort of thinking about, I noticed specifically to do with the cost of garbage pickup. We charge for bin pickup. And then but of course, if garbage is picked up on the street by the bag, we don't charge for that. I think we all know the rules and how that works. But I started to think a bit about my area, and specifically not-for-profit housing. And I thought, you know, I see every week, you know, at these properties, hundreds and hundreds of garbage bags piled up. And then a garbage truck from the city comes, and somebody gets out, and they literally load from different locations hundreds of bags, a lot of work, a lot of time. And I started to think, why would that be happening? Well, obviously, if a garbage truck comes and picks up, there is no fee. If you have a bin there, there would be a fee. So I wanted to ask you through staff, or through you to staff, is there an opportunity to look at these housing complexes and institute or improve on how we handle garbage, and specifically perhaps look at a different fee structure for the bins for not-for-profits, so that we can encourage them to stop this piling up the garbage and going through that expensive process and go to a bin. And there's lots of reasons why bin are superior to garbage being piled up, aesthetically, from a rodent, etc. So through you to staff, have they looked at that? Could we look at that?
Mr. Stanford.
Thank you.
Through the chair, we have not specifically looked at a fee dedicated to the nonprofit sector. Our current rate has been one that has been applied across all our customer base. We'd be happy to look at it. It comes with some pros and cons. Of offering a different service level, but if that is the direction from committee, then council would be happy to do that. Our current system, we know there are some flaws in certain areas where it comes to the garbage pickup system. As per the councillor's observations, there are places where bins would definitely be better, but it is a fee of $25 a month that may be viewed as unaffordable for some. So we would be happy to look at it further if need be.
Thank you. Councillor Van Holst. Still going, Councillor?
Yeah, I just want to stay on that for a couple more minutes because it is rather a big issue. I see there some benefit in this, Your Worship, so I won't bring a motion. The staff's aware of it, but I would like them to come back with some information on that to the appropriate, I guess, Civic Works on that, if that's possible. If they could make that undertaking, then no need for to take up time with the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Holst.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and through you, I wanted to point out on page 2 a piece of great news that has been interpreted as a piece of terrible news, and that's the blue boxes. So I've had a number of people write me saying that they're furious that we're going to be charging $6 to pick up a blue box, or at least more than 2 blue boxes, when they put out 3 or more, because they're very conscientious recyclers. But in fact, the news is that if you need more blue boxes to put out, you can get them from the city at the great low price of only $6. And so those are much more expensive. So this is in fact great news. If you're doing a lot of recycling, come down to our Enviro depots, pick up another blue box for $6, but you can only get a maximum of 2 per. So, but, because we have to spread those around. But that's great news. Thanks for staff for doing that piece of bulk purchasing on behalf of Londoners, and I hope people take advantage of it, and I hope that that's all cleared up now. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification, Councillor Van Holst, Councillor Squire, and Morgan.
I have a question through you, Mr. Chair. The most common issue that people raised with me when they saw these fee increases, they said, well, you increased our taxes 2.8%, and now you're increasing the fees. If you have increased fee revenue, is that money going to come towards lowering that tax rate? And if not, I'd like Mr. Hayward to tell me where that money is going, if in fact we get increased revenue. Because frankly, one of the concerns I have going forward is money is often spent on areas that I don't necessarily agree with, and that would be one area that I would really agree with. So can you help me out? Because people are, my normal approach is that if you increase people's property taxes or you increase their income taxes, that it doesn't, then you're not then entitled to increase the fees and things they pay in other areas. So I'm really interested in that.
Through the chair, yes. Unless you want me to elaborate.
Councillor Morgan.
So, like Councillor Squire, I engage with the community a little bit on this one, and these are fees that we're going to set for the next 3 years that pretty much impact everybody who uses city services in some way, and there's nobody here giving feedback. And that's not because they don't care. They do care, and I think that we have to think about doing this in a different way in the future, and I know that I certainly appreciate setting it on a multi-year basis, but when we go through the budget process, we do months of engagement on the budget because it impacts taxpayers. This impacts some families, particularly swimming lessons families, in a way similar to the tax rate. For people who have a couple of kids, it's going to be the same increase as, potentially the tax rate increase on their home. And there's good reasons for it that Mr. Coxhead's team has outlined with need to get lifeguards and that sort of thing. But people care about this. They're going to care when they find out. I don't think we're engaging properly on this. I don't think just having a PPM is the best way to engage on fees in the future. And so, I don't think we should delay passing this now because there's a number of things in it that we need to do. But I would like us to, the next time this happens, and it will be the next council because we're setting them for multiple years, do engagement on fees in a much different way, because I don't think we're getting a realistic perspective on the kinds of things that Councillor Sali is talking about with, these are fees that we can charge on a cost recovery. We can't make money on them necessarily, but we can subsidize some of them in areas where we want to align that with our strategic priorities, and we can engage with the public in a much more effective way, I think, in letting them know the fees that are being increased, the ones that they see as priorities, the ones that we want to be true user fees to be completely cost recovery, and the ones where maybe they align with our strategic priorities and we want to subsidize in some way, again, like Councillor Sali and a motion of council has passed previously to see where we can do that. So I'm not going to pass a motion now because we're going to do this unless Civic Administration wants it, because quite frankly, it's the next term of council, so I'd probably pass it should I have the pleasure to be on that council. But I just want to emphasize that, because an empty gallery doesn't mean people don't care about these fees. They do. They're just going to start calling us when they show up next year for swimming lessons, and it's more. And they're going to say, what happened? And we're going to say, we passed the fees. You didn't come to the public participation meeting. And that's not going to be good enough for people. So I'd like to do a deeper level of engagement on fees in the future, and I'll certainly be pushing that at the appropriate time.
Councillor Escher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of quick questions. I'll start with I have 3 questions, I think. And they're pretty easy. So I'll start with the recycling cart, mostly grocery carts. We got a lot of, in my area at least, we got a lot of people who use the grocery carts from the shopping malls, Mr. Chair, and then they leave them on the street or they leave them somewhere else. And sometimes they're there for days. I was looking in here to see if there's any charge for us picking up those carts. But I couldn't find, the closest I came was something that said recycling carts. And I didn't think that that was the same thing. I wonder if Mr. Stanford could tell us if we have anything in place to be able to clear those carts from ditches or streets or so on, or walkways or wherever.
Mr. Stanford.
Through the chair, recycling carts and shopping carts are clearly two different items. I'm hoping that Mr. Kasafis has the ability of answering the one dealing with shopping carts and whether there's a fee at the curb for them being collected and returned to the stores.
Through the chair, I can't recall if there's a fee, to be honest with you, for the return. I believe there was, at one point in time, a fee that was collected, but I don't believe we do that today.
And that's what I thought, Mr. Chair. I get a lot of complaints about this. In fact, there is one sitting in 2 houses down from me for the past 2 weeks, sitting right on the boulevard. And my problem is that I don't even know which shopping mall owns the cart. So I can't go to them and say, would you send somebody to collect it? But that's something I'll look into, Mr. Chair, and I'll come back with a proposal at another time. My other question, though, is to do with 2 other things. One is to do with people with disability who cannot take their garbage out to the curb. I know I have at least one person in my neighborhood, and I think that there's an arrangement that is made with staff to go in and pick up that garbage at a certain time. Is this something that we do on a mass basis, or is that just one individual?
Through the chair, we have what we call special needs customers, and we have about 125. And when we're contacted, we will arrange a special service arrangement to accommodate heavy garbage bags, blue boxes, where we're able to pick them up on the doorstep and return the empty container.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear it. My last question is to do with the regional recycling. Is that operating at a balance now between revenue and expenses, or is that only with the regional collection? And I'm trying to get, I didn't see anything in here. We're not increasing anything for recycling. So I just wonder how we balance off the expenditure and revenue at the regional recycling location on Manning Drive for all the recyclables.
Through the chair, for each of our customers, there's 9 municipalities that use this now. We have an arrangement with each one of them for, it's a cost-sharing arrangement where they receive the majority of the revenue back for recyclables that they deliver to us. We take off processing fees from that, and on an annual basis, that pretty much nets out at 0 right now. The City of London recycling program, though, that receives, of course, all the revenue from the materials that we collect, and then anything that's not recovered in the way of cost, that is then paid for through taxation.
Thank you, Councillor Helmer, then Salih.
Thank you very much. First, I have a question, which there's a reference to aquatics fee going up in the neighborhood of 16%, and I wonder if you could specifically identify what that is.
Thank you. Through the chair, the aquatics fees are going up as a result of a proposal that we made last year around adjusting wages for instructor guards. The one that goes up, the 16%, is in year, by 2019, the swim child lesson, 45-minute, 10 classes, will go to $118 from its current 65. Current $78. It used to be 61. If I can explain a little more, we had this is the project differentiation that we talked about last year. We had one size fits all. A lesson was a lesson was a lesson, whether it was a 30-minute 7-week or a 45-minute 10-week and combinations thereof. What we did was differentiate the product relative to the base rate of, at that time, was $61, and then have moved them through based on the value proposition almost per minute. So there are others likely, but that's the one that's the most significant with respect to its increase.
Great. So while we're on the topic of recreation fees, I wonder, and I think it's along the lines of what Councilor Morgan was talking about, it would probably be helpful to communicate with the folks who are using the recreation services that we're talking about increasing fees, and to directly tell them that, probably by emailing them if we have their email address. I think it'd be a good way to get better feedback on some of these things. And I agree that, you know, the PPM having nobody there when we're talking about something like increasing fees by 16% on a particular thing, like that would get somebody's attention, that's for sure. I think that's for our staff to consider. I want to ask about the Play Your Way Fund, because I know the fees in isolation, it can seem like they're going up and it'd be unaffordable for people. And I want to talk, I think maybe it should be included in these reports to talk about it, because as we make adjustments to the fees, there's also going to be the Play Your Way Fund, and my understanding is it's financed from the fees that we're collecting. So it kind of grows with the fee increases at the same time. And since we're talking about over a 3-year period, I want to make sure that as LICO changes over time, that the Play Your Way Fund also responds to that, so that if LICO is higher or lower, that the eligibility for that fund would change too.
Thank you, through your worship. Yes, that's correct. The fund is proposed to go up over the life of the 4-year plan in order to support not in particular inflation or those aspects, but to ensure that the level of participation is managed and maintained. We're currently, it's $150 per session that's available for participants in the program, and we've maintained that number. We're currently doing a review of our go-forward strategy to determine whether that's the best way for access to, number one, to maximize opportunities for individuals that need access to assistance, as well as to make sure that we're not reducing the number of opportunities by increased prices. So we're looking at that whole thing holistically, and we'll be reporting back sometime next year.
Okay, so switching gears, development services and planning. And we're talking about a 3-year period here. It looks like there's essentially no changes, no substantive changes to any of these fees, and that seems unlikely. And I know, especially in development services, for example, in the past, we've had issues with running deficits and things like that. Are we sure that we're not going to be back here making adjustments to zoning application fees, or, you know, coming in for subdivisions, these kind of pieces? I know that those budget areas are certainly increasing over time, and it seems strange to me that we wouldn't have corresponding increases on the fee side.
Go ahead, John.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question, through you to the councillor. Mr. Kotsifis and I have spoken previously to the development community about the prospect of a review of our fees coming in the next year or two. We aren't in a position to have that conversation now, as the fees are being set now for the next 3 years. It's a status quo that we've included in the fees report. However, as I said, we've certainly spoken to the industry, understanding some of the constraints, some of the issues that we've been looking at in terms of cost of development. We have, within that context, identified with the community that we will be doing a review. So it could be expected that in 2017, we would initiate that review. That relates to a fish plan, zoning amendments on my side of the equation, but I'd certainly defer to Mr. Kotsifis to speak to any of the fees that he's looking at reviewing, as well as he also has a fish plan and zoning fees plus additional fees.
Through the chair, there are a multitude of other fees that are not in the fees, rates and fees bylaw. Example, building permit fees, signed bylaw fees, licensing fees, and all of those are actually coming forward to you in the next probably 6 months. So there will be other fees proposed, but they are not contained in this report. With respect to development fees, there are some pressures that we are experiencing in some areas. So there could be, as Mr. Fleming mentioned, some increases in the next year or two, but at this point in time, we don't know what those would be. So in preparation of this bylaw, we were not prepared to put anything forward at this time.
So for what it's worth, I understand that you want to consult with folks in the development industry about adjustments to those fees. All the years that go by without adjustments to the fees, as our costs go up, we know that our costs are going up. Every year we don't increase the fees is more and more of a surprise when we eventually do increase the fees. And so I know that folks in the development industry would understand that. I know our staff understand that, but my preference is to make a lot of incremental adjustments as in pacing up with the costs rather than big catch-ups, every 3, 4, or 5 years. I think it's very straightforward to recognize that our costs are going up. I think on the areas where recreation users have hundreds or thousands of people using the services, there's not a really easy way to consult them directly. There is an easy way to consult the development industry directly, and lo and behold, their fees are not going up, and everybody else's fees, for the most part, are going up, right? So I want to make sure that we're being fair and sort of keeping those fees in relation to the actual costs. I also think on some of these development fees, I certainly had feedback that for very small, straightforward zoning changes, for example, that fees can be kind of exorbitantly high compared to all the detailed work that would have to go into assessing a big high-rise development. And what's happening now is the average is what people are paying. And so the really small people coming in for changes, they see $7,000 as being a huge barrier to doing what they want to do with their property. And I think, frankly, it's a steal for the developers who are coming in, and we have to spend hours and hours and hours working on their applications. So I hope that when that consultation is happening, that we take that into consideration. I know that we're looking, once the London plan's in, maybe moving to community planning process would be very different anyway. But I'm a little reluctant to pass this, just saying, for now, we're not going to make any adjustments at all to the development and planning services side.
Councillor Salee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll be real quick. I appreciate the staff report on this, and I think, they did what they could with what they had. I do share some of the concerns that Councillor Helmer just raised, but also just for me, just some of the increases just don't sit well with me at this stage, and I'm overall just not going to support it, and I'll just leave it at that.
Any other speakers? Okay, let's call the question. Moved by Deputy Mayor Hubert, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. There are no speakers. We're voting.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 10-2.
Colleagues, at 6:15, we have a scheduled dinner break for 6:30. The next item is one I'm not sure what level of debate we're going to engage in. So what I'd like to do is just get a sense on item 4 of how many speakers we have. If we've got an extensive speaker list, what we'll do is take a break and come back to this right off the bat. So I see there are 3, 4, 5. Let's just deal with it now. Then if we take our dinner break at 6:45 instead of 6:15, that's fine. So let's start with, I have Councillor Morgan, Councillor Squire, Councillor Armstrong, and I believe Councillor Van Holst.
Well, I'll start off with a comment. So I appreciate staff doing some work on this report. When I first read it, I thought that the 3 options were relatively limiting. I know that the first option is continue with what we had. The second option is, permitting the mayor to select. The third option is eliminate the second. But we could also proceed with both being appointed by council, no deputy mayor at all, or even contemplating what other municipalities do with an elected deputy mayor. So I appreciate that we have some options in front of us, but I didn't consider that like a full list. And I don't know if it's out of hesitancy because there are incumbents in the positions, and I always try to look at these initiatives without thinking about incumbents who currently has, because if we're going to make good policy, we need to make good policy. And so I thought that the options were limited, and I would hope that the scope of the debate certainly goes beyond this if colleagues are interested in engaging in that. And I appreciate that there's, a secondary discussion depending on what the option is on how issues would be distributed. I think that's articulated in the report. I certainly want to hear my colleagues. This is a problem with going first. Certainly want to hear what people think about those things. But I'm glad I got to lead off the debate to encourage colleagues to keep an open mind to see what else we could possibly contemplate as we consider a very important structure of council. So I'll leave it at that. I'll likely weigh into the debate again after I've heard what colleagues think about this.
Councillor Squire, Armstrong, Van Holst, Silly.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to move the elimination of the second deputy mayor position and get that on the floor, so we're discussing something. And I don't know if I have a seconder. I didn't even talk to anyone. But this is the third time I've spoken on this issue. And I hope my colleagues understand that I've been consistent from the start to the end that I do not want the second deputy mayor position. And I will say this only once. I think that the way that things have gone the last 2 years and where we are now has proved that it hasn't been the best for this council. And I'm going to tell you why I don't think it's the best for this council or any council. I have the utmost respect for all of my colleagues. And I've never been pleased with the idea that one of my colleagues would be elevated to a position over the other members of council. Now, when I first brought it up 2 years ago, I was told, well, it will be a learning position and it'll only go for 1 year and we'll rotate it every year and people will learn. And quite frankly, that didn't happen. Now we've made the necessary adjustments we have to make sure there is coverage if the first deputy mayor is not around. So we've dealt with that. So there's no issue now about, well, somebody might be they might both be out of town. We've dealt with that. The mayor can deal with that. So I'm not sure what the rationale is anymore for the second deputy mayor position, because obviously we didn't follow what people said initially, which was that it would be a learning position that we'd rotate every year. We didn't do that. So if it is the position, well, we need a liaison between the mayor and council. We need that position. Well, I just want to assure you that I'm perfectly happy to take on that position for myself with the mayor. If I need to meet with the mayor about something, I will contact the mayor's office and go down and meet with him and discuss it with him. It's just my habit that the mayor's probably saying, well, he hasn't met with me for a long time. Well, it's just not my habit to have a lot of meetings with people. I try to avoid doing that. But somebody... It feels like yesterday. It feels like yesterday, yeah. So there just isn't that reason anymore from my point of view. Now, there is a deputy mayor who's in place, and Councillor Hubert, Deputy Mayor Hubert, has done a good job, in my view, of doing what that is, which is to be helpful to the mayor, supportive of the mayor on issues, provide another person there for the mayor, and I think he's done a wonderful job at that. The second deputy mayor position, I'm sorry, I just never understood it, and frankly, I think we're ready to move forward, get work done. Each of us absolutely has the ability to do what we need to do in terms of liaisoning with the mayor, representing the mayor at events that we can move forward. So that's where I am right now, and that's why I want to bring this motion right off the bat, and I want to get moved forward on this. So that's what I'm prepared to do. So I'm going to move that.
Thank you, Councillor. And there is a seconder. Councillor Van Holst has indicated that he's seconding the motion. Councillor Van Holst, I've got you next on the speakers list. Pardon me, I have Councillor Armstrong, then Van Holst, and Silly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Here, I thought something was going on. Your Worship, I'm indifferent. I guess the thing is obviously, the second deputy mayor, there was a rationale behind it. I'm not sure today whether there's a lot of interest. I'm hearing there's not a lot of interest in having the position. I guess the thing is that while I found, and I heard the previous councillor had mentioned that, the work would be redistributed. And I've always been interested when the mayor couldn't attend events, especially in my ward, that I would be called upon to attend those events. What I found in the past was that quite often I would be at the events for other reasons and find out that nobody's there. There's nobody representing City Council. And it was just by luck that I made it to the event. And that quite often I was never even notified that there wasn't an opportunity to attend. That's the big problem. Nobody shows up from city council representing, and then I'm not speaking about just the current situation, but in the past, nobody lets me know when things are going on in my ward and when they can't attend. So they go unattended. And that's a problem. That's a problem. So in any event, I'm indifferent at this point as far as the second deputy mayor is concerned. I think though between now and, in the next little while, I think we may have to, revisit and have the discussion about structure in the future, whether or not the mayor should be appointing a deputy mayor or whether council should appoint a deputy mayor. I feel very strongly at this point it should be council that should appoint deputy mayors, not the mayor. And so in any event, for now, I'm happy to support the elimination, but I think I'd like to look at an appointed deputy mayor by council for the next election, if there is to be any deputy mayors.
Thank you, Councillor Van Holst. Lee Cassidy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate Councillor Morgan's comments, although he did forget the option of all deputy mayors. However, I think I'm happy to second this motion without one. I think the mission critical piece is who performs the acting mayor position, and we just need a way to deal with that. And I guess I'm not that concerned how that goes. If I was to jest, I could say we could just put us in order of longest hair to shortest hair, and that would be fine with me. But so knowing who, I think if the clerks know who would be the acting mayor in some order, then it'd be very easy for them to find a replacement if it was necessary. However, I'll support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Lee Cassidy Helmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just listening to the debate. I'll probably come around, but at this stage, I'll probably support this motion. There was some interesting points that were raised here that were on my mind as far as when looking back at how we actually appoint deputy mayor just in general and moving forward in the future. I know in Hamilton, they rotate it once monthly, and I think that's, to me, I'm not, it's really just, I said it before, it's just a position to me. I have no interest. Even if there was a pool, I wouldn't want to do it. So I'll probably support the motion that's in front of me, but maybe I'll come back with an amendment.
Councillor Cassidy.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I appreciate the comments of Councillor Squire. I just wanted to call or respond to one thing that he said about elevating one person above the other. Since I did serve in the role for about 18 months, I hope he never felt that I felt I was superior to him or anybody on council, because I never did. And I certainly don't feel inferior to Deputy Mayor Hubert. I agree he's doing an amazing job as Deputy Mayor. I certainly never felt above any of my colleagues. I always feel like we are a team. Sometimes we're not a very good team. Sometimes there is an I in team around here, but that's okay. It's what we're supposed to do. So I just wanted to put that comment out there. This is a process. This was a structure that was recommended by the previous council, and it was one of the first things that we confirmed as the new council, putting in place the structure that was recommended by the previous council. We've done it. We did it for 18 months. I was pleased to represent the city as the deputy mayor, but I'm just as happy representing the city as a Ward 5 councillor, representing Ward 5, or when I'm at an event representing city council as the Ward 5 councillor. I'm equally pleased, and as I said, I never felt better or superior to anybody on this council, or that I had any kind of authority. It's a title, and sometimes titles are important to people. It means a lot to them to have a deputy mayor at an event, but they are just as happy, I will admit, to have a ward councillor come to their event out in the city representing city council. So I'm happy to listen to how the debate goes. As just like Councillor Armstrong, I'm indifferent, and I will go along with how the debate goes. I'll see how it goes, and I'll cast my vote accordingly.
Councillor Helmer.
Yeah, so I'm not persuaded that we need to eliminate the second position. We only had it going at all for 18 months, and I certainly haven't seen anything that leads me to say that it needs to be taken away. I will say that we got to be really clear about what the actual responsibilities are versus what people might imagine them to be. And it's in the report, it's very clear. It's essentially saying you're the chair of this committee, you're a member of these other 3 committees, and this is how you are a designate for the mayor when the mayor is not available to do something. So for this second deputy mayor, in most cases, it's being the second designate. So after the mayor or the mayor as appointed deputy mayor can't act, then this person steps in. I think it's very smart from a business continuity perspective to just have that laid out. This is the way it goes, and that there's 3 people to cover that off. I think it makes a lot of sense, and we've not fortunately had any kind of emergency where we need somebody to act, and there could be something that happens to the mayor. There could be something that happens to the mayor and the deputy mayor. And I think just from a business continuity perspective, having a cascade that has 3 people involved in it is very smart and worth doing. I'm not too fussed about who's the chair of Corporate Services Committee, which is essentially what you're voting on when you're picking the deputy mayor appointed by council. We do that all the time. We're just about to do it. We're going to pick chairs for committees. And I hate to break it to anybody, but I don't feel special because I'm the chair of Civic Works Committee. And I don't think that any of the deputy mayors are particularly special because they're deputy mayor. You know, like we're all going to take on different roles over the course of our service on council. And it's really not this special role that has, you know, I don't know. There's some things that I think people perceive that it's about that it's not really about. And I realize that the way that the people who are deputy mayors actually act while they're in deputy mayor role can kind of create this perception about there being, you know, they're working together with the mayor or something like that. And on some issues, sure. On other issues, no. And, you know, I don't think that we should design our policy around how 2 people have worked as deputy mayor. I think we got to figure out how should we have this set up so that we're providing for those continuity pieces. And then maybe we need to adjust the committees, you know, town and gown, the 2 liaison committees. Do we really need to appoint the deputy mayor to those? Maybe not. In my view so far, for example, those liaison committees have not been really doing very much. And I don't know if we need to have them at all, let alone have the deputy mayor on them. The town and gown committee, I think maybe that's a different matter and it makes sense to have the deputy mayor as a member of that committee. So I certainly haven't seen, you know, a really strong reason to get away from it. I'm a bit loath to make changes quickly after implementing something. I think, you know, I know it's only been 18 months, but I do think we can get by fine if we don't have one. It's not some crucial piece that's never, you know, nothing will work properly if we don't have it. But I do think I just haven't seen the need to take it away. I think we should have appointed somebody back in the moment when Councillor Cassidy resigned. I think we should have filled that position in June and not punted it off until now. I think it's become some kind of like difficult decision or something who to appoint, and I don't see that. I mean, we're going to appoint people to committees. This is essentially what this is saying you're the chair of Corporate Services Committee and you also do a couple of other things. I don't get how that's any different than all the other appointments we're going to make.
No additional speakers. Councillor Van Holst, you've spoken to this. We'll start the second round, and then I'm going to call the question, I think, after that.
Thank you. I would just add that it does add another layer of complexity, so that means the system is not as robust and resilient. So, and we saw that it can break. Whereas if we just all cover the various options, we can figure it out easily and perhaps more appropriately.
Any other speakers? Okay, got a motion that's been moved and seconded. Let's call the question.
Closing the vote, and the motion carries 8-3.
Okay, colleagues.
Oh.
You missed a vote? Okay. Do you need reconsideration, Deputy Mayor?
No, it's just yay.
Okay. So Deputy Mayor Hubert is indicating that he was voting when the vote was closed and he had intended to vote yay. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, colleagues, it is just after 6:30. We have one final report to deal with in the public session before going in camera. But what I'd like to do at this time is just have a motion to take a dinner break. We'll break for 20 minutes. We'll meet back in here at 5 to 7. Pick things up from there. Moved by Councillor Van Hol, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hubert. All those in favor? Enjoy your dinner, and we'll see you back at 5 to 7. We'll just take a look at that next item. It's item 5 for direction, the 12th report of the governance working group. I'll look to the chair to see if she has any comments about this as we deal with the direction before us. Go ahead.
I do have some comments, and I'm just looking for the report. So the governance working group mandate was extended a couple of times based on the work as assigned by council. At the last governance working group, we had reached the end of our mandate, and there was a recommendation put forward that SPPC consider extending the mandate only to deal with the outstanding items, and then on an as-needed basis in the future. So when governance issues come up, they would be sent to governance working group subcommittee. So I think other than that, the committee has wrapped up most of its mandate, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councillor Salih.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's been a privilege and honor to serve on the governance working group for, I guess, 2 years. And I believe the next step now is I think you guys are going to be soliciting for names or I just want to make sure, because I'm officially done now. I just wanted to make sure and that that legacy continues. Thank you.
So the councillor is correct. When this is approved by council, the remaining matters will need to be dispensed either by coming to SPPC, in which case the good councillor could deal with them again as governance issues, or in the case of creating a new governance working group, they could be sent back to that group.
Let's look for a motion up on screen. Moved by the committee chair. That's okay. I don't think the committee chair minds. Councillor Usher, seconded by. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Any further discussion? Let's call the question. We're voting.
Closing the vote and the motion carries 12-0.
Okay, colleagues, let's now, that does deal with the public agenda, so let's look for a motion to go in camera. I'll remind you, I'm hearing a whoa, whoa, whoa. And I don't know if that's in the council procedural bylaw, but Councillor Helmer, go ahead.
Thank you. I try and innovate everywhere, including with, no. So part 2 of that says a governance working group be established composed of 5 members, and I'm just wondering when we're intending to appoint those 5 members.
We're going to deal with those appointments at the same time as all the other committee appointments. Go ahead.
Thank you. If that resolved the councillor's question prior to going in camera, I did have an additional item that I'd like to add as a reason for going in camera. And it's a matter pertaining to employee negotiations and personal matters involving identifiable individuals who are municipal employees with respect to employment-related matters and reports, advice, and recommendations of officers and employees of the corporation, including communications necessary for that purpose and for the purpose of providing direction to officers and employees of the corporation, and advice subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose.
Okay, so colleagues, we have 4 reasons for going in camera, including the added from earlier today, C4. This would be considered C5. It's being distributed now, and so we'll deal with that, and then we'll go in camera. Okay, so all 5 matters are up, the 3 from the original agenda, the 1 additional matter that's posted, and then this matter that Councillor Ridley has brought forward. It's been moved by Councillor Van Hol, seconded by Councillor Ridley. And I want to bring to your attention that number 4 is revised. And so we're just going to read that out to ensure that the public's aware of why we're going in camera for C4. Go ahead.
A matter pertaining to litigation or potential litigation with respect to an application for hearing by London Police Services Board to the Ontario Civilian Police Commission arising out of the 2016 to 2019 multi-year budget process. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and advice and recommendations of officers and employees of the corporation for the purpose of providing instructions and directions to officers and employees of the corporation with respect to an application for hearing by London Police Services Board to the Ontario Civilian Police Commission arising out of the 2016 to 2019 multi-year budget process.
Okay, colleagues, there are no speakers, so I'm going to call the question. We're voting.
Thanks, Barb. Closing the vote and the motion carries 12-0.